Everybody doing?
Nice to see you.
Welcome you, every one of you, to the Milton City Hall. It is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting of the Milton Plan Commission for Tuesday, October 8th, 2019 to order. The first item is the roll call. Abby?
Farrar,
Here.
Hubbard,
Here.
Murray. Here. Paulson.
Here.
Ramsey.
Here.
Slavish.
Here.
Wonderful. So the second item is the approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Okay, we are on to now the item number 2, design review, fence for Avenue, Auto Body, and Ranch Auto, 7645 Lisa Lane, and 3113 Laura Lane. Is anybody who's going to, you're going to
I
speak?
can
or-
give a little background.
All right.
Daphne wrote the staff comments here. The applicants are proposing a fence bordering their two properties, which are auto-related businesses from the residential development occurring next to them. They've expressed concerns about trespassing from residents and their dogs and safety issues related to that. At your place, I placed an email that you received this afternoon, or actually early this evening. So that email is from a representative of Wrench, and he also provided some photos with that, which I can pull up if you'd like to see them. And I think that was it for what I had for that item, other than what was in your packet, which I have on the screen.
And can you just pull up the aerial that Daphne emailed us
Oh, I
that
didn't-
shows the location of this relative to the other properties? That was actually what I think would be the most.
Most helpful. Sorry, I had forgotten to.
Yep, no, that's okay.
put that in there.
Is there anybody from Avenue, Auto Body, or Ranch here to speak?
No, the email said that they
Yeah, I know.
can't attend.
I actually went there and I can't really understand what the issues are. I just
I
wanted
don't
to
see
go.
it in
in.
our file.
Yes, Susan, you want to please?
Nope.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Avenue
Yeah,
near-
please, go ahead and
Yeah.
still identify yourself. We know who
Okay,
you are.
Susan West, 3542 John Muir Drive, District 6, Alder. I have talked to the owner of Avenue Auto Body and actually witnessed there are quite a few people coming from the apartment buildings smoking cigarettes. And a problem has been they want to throw their cigarette butts into Avenue Auto Body's trash cans, which could be a huge fire hazard. They also have a problem with dog walkers who walk their dogs on Avenue's property and don't always pick up the dog poop afterwards. And this is actually something I would like Plan Commission in the future to address for large apartment buildings, is the concept of a small dog park for big apartment buildings that could help solve this problem, and potentially some areas for smoking outside of.
Thank you, Susan. So after I
And
got
have you,
this.
have you seen the email Benjamin Beer sent to us this afternoon?
No, I haven't.
It outlines many of the same concerns with the pictures that Mark was pulling up.
And
you-
I've
Has he talked
witnessed
to
both of these.
Has he talked to Oakbrook or JT?
Yeah, has anybody
I don't know.
reached out to?
I mean, that would be certainly, either way, that's a good, maybe we could, Mark, you could send him an email and just ask him to reach out to the property manager to ask them to, at the very least,
Yeah, that would be a good
notify the
idea.
residents.
But it has been, I talked to him a couple months ago, so it's an ongoing problem.
So, where's the fence that we required Meadow Ridge to put up?
That's,
So what you see in the
Yeah.
aerial is Meadow Ridge.
yeah, the
their
matter
fence
is,
up
the
here.
fence, which is really nice, that's on the,
Yeah.
that's
East
between
side.
Fitzgerald and Oak
Yeah.
Ridge. Yeah, so I don't know whether we required or how it was, but that's a very nice fence.
Generally, we do have some, I don't know if it's a requirement or just a practice, that you screen or fence between kind of competing land uses.
So what I saw in this case is rather than a fence, it is, not like the fence which is close to the Oak Ridge. It's just by 2x4s, just split wood fence, maybe about 3 feet tall, maybe 2.5 feet tall. But then there's a drainage right next to it. So whether there's stormwater or something else, and then there are those properties. So I couldn't really find anybody to talk to there, either at the Rancho Avenue Auto Body Shop. So I went there a little bit after 5, so they close at 5. So I don't think that we should first ask maybe, if JT can talk to them and, help solve that problem. And then maybe,
Well, Yeah, the reason I raise that is the owner of the auto body was concerned about they're having to pay the expense of the fence, which, of course, normally people pay to put the fence on their own property, but he seems to raise the question that there was a required fence that was
For
not
one-
installed?
Yeah, well, no, I think.
That's for Oak
One was
Ridge.
required and one wasn't. One was required to put up a fence and the other one wasn't, I think.
There wasn't a fence that was required at Oak Ridge, and we had that idea too, that, well, maybe there's some compromise between the two property owners, and maybe, JT Klein would be willing to cover even a portion of the cost to upgrade it to a more decorative style fence. And Daphne reached out to him via email, and my understanding is that he said he wasn't willing to do that, and he also, from my recollection of the email.
I have it.
You've got it up?
I
Okay.
have it, yeah.
Please.
So he referred to a huge retaining wall. I would call it a retaining wall.
This. This is huge.
And retention pond between, actually, he's probably referring to this up the
That,
bigger-
yeah, that.
Sorry. Retaining wall and retention pond between Oak Ridge and the auto repair place, and it would be nearly impossible for a senior with a dog to get from our property to theirs. And then he also added that, he added a personal opinion that this type of fence should not be acceptable, and the Plan Commission should require the owners to install a minimum of wood cedar fence,
And
preferably a Trex
this is
fence.
from JT?
That's from Jacob Klein,
Okay. Jacob Klein.
yeah. And he
Because
goes on a bit.
it's the senior development that's closest to the auto body.
Yeah, so I
I
actually,
think the argument that the auto shop is making in this letter is that this chain link fence is within their budget, and what they're,
Right.
seemingly what they're asking is, did we not require any landscaping from the Klein development to kind of buffer between the two properties? And I think his argument probably is, they're not going to see my chain link fence if they would do the landscaping that he felt was required.
but it is landscaped.
Is it?
I was there, so yeah.
If we can put a note in the file, and not to give staff more work, but we should review our policies to make sure that anytime you have two kind of competing land uses, that there is both either a fencing or a landscaping requirement, not just for internal to the parcel, but because like 6 feet arborvitae, if they grow through, would, right?
Right.
Right, landscape
Yeah,
architect?
that would shield it.
That would shield it.
Yeah, I can't really see that, maybe we need to have these auto body shop people and JT Klein and the staff get together and have a meeting and bring them together.
Do you think that would work, Mark?
To have a meeting to discuss it?
Yeah, the two property owners.
I think that's a good,
I mean, is he in a rush to get his permit now before the winter? So we can put the fence in before the winter? Or could we delay till
Next meeting.
the 22nd? I know that throws a wrench in things, but,
I'm not sure I'm not sure that his issue is trying to get it in before winter as much as trying to keep people off his property.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a safety concern. Mechanics pulling cars into the.
Yeah, I like-
That being said, if we reach out to Mr. Klein, staff reaches out to Mr. Klein, maybe that there would be time then to have a discussion and
The
come
only,
to agreement.
so then the only place they could reach to their property would be on the south end. That's where there's a green area is and there's no barrier. Otherwise, rest of the area right next to the Ranch Auto Body Shop and Avenue Auto Body Shop, there's that storm drain there. I can't really see that how they could even reach there.
Where do you want me to zoom in?
Never mind.
Well, can you show us on the aerial where the fence would be? I mean, there's got to be some fencing or blockage. Because auto repair and pedestrians don't work together.
Yes, Susan?
Yeah, I would like to say, when I was there observing, it would be people walking down the sidewalk and then walking into the auto body.
Trespassing right
I
on
see.
Trespassing.
property,
Yes,
So then you need a fence in the front then.
it's, yes, the front is where I think it's really needed.
Okay.
You know, the side between
Okay.
the two properties, and then maybe some along the sidewalk.
Okay, so the staff has to work out those details
Yeah.
with them then.
And-
Yeah, I saw when I went there, there was somebody smoking, but he was walking along the road, and at least when I was there, he was close to that Tresta property, so.
And on the other hand, we shouldn't necessarily burden property owner with having to put up a fence to keep out trespassers.
Right.
No.
That's
Because,
what I'm
I mean, if
thinking.
people are trespassing, they can call the police, but I'd really like to see them get together with Jacob. and
Well,
Work
if
something out,
it-
because we're gonna add more housing units there with Tresta too, and so there's more people around.
But Kurt, if it's a trespassing and it's from the front, JT has nothing to do with it.
Right, if it's from that, because the sidewalk does not extend all the way down to,
It's just in front of his buildings.
Laura Lane, yeah.
Yeah. It's probably not, oh yeah, we know the air photo's not up to date.
Okay, so then the best is the staff and those Avenue Auto Body Shop, they should get together.
And since the owner was ill and couldn't come today, I think giving them 2 weeks to try to work it out before we decide something
Yep.
without their presence.
So-
So I would move to defer this item until next meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any further question or discussion? All those in favor of the motion to defer until next Plan Commission meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to item number 3, and we know somebody who's going to
Yeah, Mayor, I'm
recuse
gonna- as-
himself.
As
That's,
previously discussed, I'm going to recuse myself of items 3 and 4.
yes, Mike Slavish is going to recuse himself. So, but we still got the quorum, and we move forward with the item number 3. This is the specific implementation plan, the Eddie, there's a name change from Addison to Eddie.
Yes.
6814 University Avenue. So who is going to present it?
I have some staff comments here.
Okay.
So I also put at your place tonight a memo, which I realized in hindsight would have been helpful to have in your packet. Just to refresh your memory, the council in February revisited their lack of approval, shall we say, from last year, last May of 2018. And in 2019, they considered a different plan for the Addison, which is how it was called at the time. And so instead of having the L-shaped building that was oriented towards the cul-de-sac in the back with the part of it coming towards the university, they flipped it, so now it is an actual L shape, the way we're used to Ls. And it involves the removal of these
Cottage?
cottage that was there, thank you. And it's now limited to a height of 3 stories. That was the solution for gaining the council's approval at the February meetings. The memo that I put at your place is my memo to the council describing the changes to the plan for the purpose of conveying the GIP that was approved. It was the framework was approved with a three-story, with a decreased parking ratio, which I should have highlighted in the staff comments, and I apologize I didn't do that. So there would be, instead of having a layer of underground parking, that's been removed. The below-ground parking has been removed. The parking that is internal to the building is now on the first level. And about 20 spaces, I can't remember the exact number here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just under 20, it looks like, are on the rear of the building.
25 is under and 18 is
Yeah.
surface, so.
And so those are the changes, is basically the building came forward, removing the cottage, limited to a height of 3 stories, and some additional surface parking spots are in the rear of the building, shielded from University Avenue. And then what you have in your packet then, of course, are the detailed plans, including the elevations and lighting plan, et cetera. Staff recommendation is that we have concluded that this is very consistent with what the GIP stated that was approved in February, and so we are recommending approval.
Can you go full screen on that
Sure,
site?
sorry,
plan?
I'm just trying to, full screen on the site plan, so I don't usually work with the computer here, sorry. Full screen mode, there we go, thank you. I should have done
There we
that
go.
earlier.
Go ahead.
Did we have, I know his.
The architect
is here.
Yep, yep.
Do we have renderings of the exterior of the building?
Yep, I'm getting there, oops.
There you go.
So this is the front elevation right here at the bottom. That faces University. The west elevation is at the top, so that's facing the residence to the west. North
Businesses to the west.
and east. Yep, the business is to the east. Yep, the insurance
Resident.
building, yep,
Insurance building is to the east,
is
right?
correct.
There we go.
And one of the ways that Mr. Feller and Iconica responded, which we appreciate at the staff level, is we asked them to add some windows at ground level.
We have the easels for,
I can easily get them.
yeah, I think, yeah, that's going. So can you talk about some of the design features that you've
Absolutely.
put in and show the program?
My name is Bob Feller. I'm the architect for the project and with Iconica. Really, the materials and the forms that were established in what was submitted earlier have been continued and just redeveloped for 39 units and 3 stories. So we still have the masonry base of the building that fronts onto University Avenue. We still have the smart siding, so a more residential type of feel for the red siding. And then we're using also a smart siding for the gray portion, which is going to be more of a panelized version, board and batten. At the entry points, we are utilizing brick, so accent points for that human touch, a little bit more rich feel to it. That'll be on the University Avenue side as well as on the parking lot side. So the views that you're looking
Wait,
at,
Say that again. On the parking lot side would be,
we're incorporating a brick accent
okay.
at the entry points.
Thank you, I was having trouble with that one.
What is smart siding? What does it consist of?
Smart siding is a composite wood siding, been in the market now for 10 or 12 years, used on apartment buildings and residential projects throughout Dane County.
Thank you.
So this image we're looking at is oriented and shows us the east elevation, which is where the driveway would be by the insurance
Correct.
building.
Correct. So the orientation of the building, by turning the L so that we have the long face along University Avenue, really is essentially hiding the parking lot from views on University Avenue, giving a nicer front onto the street, still pedestrian friendly with the 3 stories, enough articulation with the front. We do have a landscape buffer zone between the building and the sidewalk, 10 feet.
10 feet?
And so that's where a majority of the landscaping is being put on the property. We are also doing landscaping around the parking lot and along the western edge.
It does look much nicer than before. I like the changes.
facade facing University Avenue, can you point out where the doors are located?
Sure.
It's down there where that light spot is.
Oh, you have to take the microphone, because otherwise if you're watching on YouTube later, you can't hear the.
Just like a video here. All right. So the entry point on University Avenue is centered in the building, and this is this brick portion here. So we'll have storefront, a canopy, very welcoming. The intention is that we're trying to make this as welcoming as possible for foot traffic as well as automobile traffic.
In the bottom image on the second
Yeah.
building penetration and on the bottom floor there, is that a door or is that a window?
That is a door. So we have a dog wash station within the garage area. We wanted to make it convenient for the residents to bring their pet in without tracking mud throughout the building. We also have underground, that's the entrance to the underground parking, where we have individualized bicycle parking for the residents, so they can bring their bicycle in through that way as well.
Mark pointed out something, I guess I'll ask. If you look at this south elevation, if you go slightly west of the main door where Mark has the cursor, there seems to be a missing window there relative to, because you've got two on the west side, and I guess if I'm facing south, it's two on the left side of this image and 4 on the east side.
Correct. So in that location in the basement, that's where we have our mechanicals, water
Okay.
heaters, utilities, that type of thing.
Can you put in like a fake window?
Spandrel type glass? Yeah.
Whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just wondering so that when you're walking along the street, it looks like it's a symmetric window system, even though obviously you don't want windows. You don't want windows into mechanicals, yeah, yeah. But I know they can make fake windows.
Yes. Yeah. we
And
have
the technical term is what?
Spandrel.
Spandrel.
Glass.
So just for our benefit, the number of total parking spaces,
We have 25 under building and 18 on site.
and that was part of the agreement in the GIP.
GIP. We're actually just one short of that, and that's primarily because of the original layout, which was done by another designer, did not have accessible parking under the building. So once we put into the accessible lane for the parking stall, that's where we lost one of our stalls.
And so there was a discussion months ago about parking inside the building on the first floor. Is there still? Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
There is, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, can you come up to use the
Yeah, you gotta use the mic. You gotta use the mic just for the,
Otherwise, I can jump in here. The parking is at grade.
Okay.
So as you pull in along the east side of the building, go through the parking lot, as you pull to the vertical leg of the apartment building, there'll be an overhead door there, and that's where you enter into the building
Okay.
at grade
Sorry.
with 25 parking stalls.
okay. But
That-
not, I mean, to Jen's concern from the Terrace Avenue question a couple of weeks ago, it's not if anyone walking along the street would be able to see a car face
Correct.
in the parking garage.
Correct.
No, and this parking is in the back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The parking is summarized in the second paragraph of my February 14th memo. And as Mr. Feller noted, there's one less space, which I would consider,
Yep, I see it.
we can live with that.
Yeah.
Additionally, trash enclosures, trash storage is within the building, so we have no on-grade structures for that. And all of our mechanical units are housed within the building, so no rooftop equipment, so no screening required.
And that part is also good,
Yes, it is.
because it's in the single-family neighborhood, and you want to do every possible thing to make it
Exactly.
look good.
Lowering the heights, reduced noise, easier to maintain.
And you had the landscaping and lighting plans in here too.
Correct.
I'm not sure if there was other questions on the,
I addressed my questions at the staff level. I found the outdoor lighting plan to be compatible or consistent with our ordinance, except for the, you can't see them here, but these numbers are slightly high on the southern end, but that's because of street lighting, not because of their lighting. So I'm okay with it.
and the landscaping plan conforms?
it looks like it does. I actually didn't do the tally, quite frankly, because I just didn't get a chance to do it yet. But we would say contingent on resolution of all engineering staff comments, and they always make sure that those,
Yeah.
so.
But particularly screening between the parking lot and the residences.
Yep.
Can you just describe what those are? Not the least of which is it's really small in our print, just for the audience too.
Yeah, I may actually have Justin step up and speak to that. We have Justin Zampardi with Vierbicker,
Okay.
who are the civil engineers and landscape architects for the project.
Zoom in on this.
Justin Zampardi with Vierbecker. So there is some screening on the north side of the parking stalls, and then also along the north side of the building on that north property line, there's some additional landscaping along there.
And what's the planting there? The 9RG, it's so small.
PG is a white spruce. What are you asking about? RG is a green mound alpine currant.
Basically, it'll block views of the parking lot from the residences. That's the concern,
Or screen them.
right?
12-foot height.
Our landscape architect here is trying to,
Yeah.
Yeah, so the ones just north of the parking stalls are arborvitae. It's the TO
okay.
upright evergreen shrubs. And then along the north side of the building, there's the white spruces.
That should spruce things up a little bit.
Will the windows be operable? The facade, or just a portion of those, or how are those designed?
Very good question. The large windows are 6 by 6, and a 2 foot by 3 foot portion of the window is operable. It's a hopper type window.
And then the sign, I was curious about, you've got an elevation in the packet on page 30.
So a banner type sign, 2'4" in depth, 16 feet in height.
Is that at the end? I can't remember where that is now.
Page-
Yeah,
No, that's page 3, well, 18 of the packet and 3 of 37.
There it is. It's right here.
so that'll be internally illuminated.
Yep, there on the right.
Yeah.
There's a historic feel that we were hoping to achieve by downlighting on it, but there was concern about light glaring into the eyes of automobile traffic oncoming.
Yeah, and I had encouraged them to include the sign as part of their package. I didn't call it out specifically, but I would recommend approval of the sign as well.
Sign conforms with,
It's a PDD, so I think the design that they've selected and what they're trying to go for, I have no problem with it. I think it looks nice.
So you have a refuge and recycling, there's a chute that will be at one place or how?
Correct. Right at the interior corner of the L shape, there is a refuse room on each floor, and so residents will be able to go to it. It's a rated enclosure. Go to that room, open up one of 2 chutes, and let their recyclables or their refuse go down, and they'll go into separated dumpsters. Those dumpsters are essentially 2 parking stalls away from the overhead door, so they'll get rolled out of the rated room to the overhead door, and then the trash truck will pick it up, dump it, drop it, and they'll roll it back. So odors, smells,
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
all enclosed.
So do you guys have any about the deed restrictions, any issues? That's also on page 3.
which issue?
Page 3.
There are deed restriction on the western border that's a 10-foot wide private right-of-way easement.
Page 3 of,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's along the western edge of the property.
Mhm.
10-foot wide, 6 feet,
Right, this is really
or
small.
6'1" is on the subject property.
Okay.
4 foot is on the adjacent property. landscaping as well as the civil engineering has taken that all into account, maintaining the grades as close as possible.
And then you're taking care of the storm water, well
Correct,
retention
correct.
pond.
Yep, no retaining wall on that side. We're not
Yeah.
changing the elevations enough that that should be hampered. And then the second one is actually the piece of land to the north and slightly east of the property where our stormwater management, the majority of our stormwater management is occurring.
Any further questions? Dan, Jennifer,
No.
I would
Kurt?
make a motion that we determine that the SIP materials are consistent with the GIP and recommend approval of the Common Council contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments.
Need it?
Second.
Okay. Now any further question or comments? Okay, if there are no question or comments, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
So, next one is certified, item number 4.
Thank you for your help, folks.
It is certified survey map.
Move approval contingent on resolution of engineering staff comments.
Second.
Okay, any questions? Jennifer, Dan,
No, looks good.
Kurt, Lee?
No, CSM looks
Okay,
normal.
that looks good. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the CSM for the Eddie 6814 University Avenue, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Michael Slavish can come inside. Okay, we are on to item number 5. Concept review, Pleasant View Park Apartments, Greenway Center, West Lots 3 and 4, west of 8560 Greenway Boulevard. Abby,
Yep, so this is just on for concept review tonight. I think that there are still a number of issues worked out with the development. First and foremost is probably the requirement for height variance from the FAA, and I know that the applicant has filed a request for that. There are also considerations related to a desire for some land dedication to be accepted in exchange for park fees, and that is something that the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission makes a recommendation on, and then the Common Council needs to approve that. In our meetings with the applicant, I know that they would like to go ahead and proceed with getting that before the Parks Board for consideration. So my recommendation tonight was simply to refer it to PRFC, but we have a few members in the audience that I think would like to make a formal presentation and show you what they're working on.
okay, so let's go.
It's not on.
I just looked at it.
This is conceptual.
Only the finest technology.
There you go. Thank you. My name is Joe Lee with JLA Architects. I'm here with Jeff Straubel and Jim Stoppel, part of our clients and the developers of the project. They'll come up in a few minutes and speak as well. I want to give a brief overview of the project. We're excited to come and present this concept to you. This is an exciting project we've been working on the past 6 months or so. So I'll give you a brief overview of how we got to where we are today, and then of the concept, and get some feedback from you. So when we began working on this 6-8 months ago, the initial concepts for a multifamily project at this location on the northern end of Pleasant View, right across from Pleasant View Golf Course, the northern portion of that. Our initial concepts were like many multifamily developments that you've seen come through this body and in Dane County in general. 4 to 5 story type of structure and density, and it was about 250 or 60 units, I believe, back then, with one level or a level and a half of underground parking. We were at the conceptual level, like I said before. This site has a, you can see it on the eastern side of the site, the bike path, the City of Middleton bike path. Thank you, Mark. And it comes around to the south and then currently goes up back to the north. So that is on our site, and that's a site constraint we'd have to work with, as well as some topography changes. There's a lot of topography on this site, some bedrock underneath the site, and then as we started to develop the concept, the new plan for or a plan for new road construction on Pleasant View, which is highlighted in our plan there. That's the current plan for the new road. Came into play. Those three things, especially the new road construction, really condensed, and the bike path really condensed, keeping the bike path where it is, really condensed the footprint or in the available developable land for our project. So we went back to the drawing board. In fact, it was dormant for a while. Developer didn't think, Jeff didn't think we could make it work until we started talking about what if we went vertically with this project, and we enlisted a contractor to help us vet out some of the cost issues, and it turns out going up vertically is a pretty desirable option for this parcel. And so what's in front of you now is a 14-story multifamily building with 3 levels of underground parking to accommodate
3 levels of underground?
3 levels of underground parking.
Essentially 17 levels.
I'm sorry, Amir?
14 stories at grade,
14
but
plus
17.
30.
Correct. So there's 17 levels, but 3 of them are subsurface. There's a little bit of exposure on the northeast side just to get down to those parking levels, but it would be classified as a 14-story building. So in order to fit the density on the site, like I said before, to make this a viable project and a quality project, equally as important that my clients want to build in the City of Middleton, going vertical is necessary, and to do that, getting close to the density that we were before in some of our initial concepts of the 5-story building, which was about 250 units. This is about 210. We have to go up, and that does a few things. We have to change our construction type so that 4 to 5-story building is a wood frame construction.
Nice, yeah.
Which is fairly economical.
Steel and concrete.
Once you go to 6 stories, the numbers you have to change construction types to non-combustible construction types, and that's why you don't really see 6-story multifamily buildings anywhere, because it just doesn't, the economics of it don't work. You have to change construction types, and to get that to work, you need to, if you're going to go 6, you might as well go taller. So this is 14 stories to maintain roughly the same density at a non-combustible concrete construction throughout. This would be post-tension concrete, which is a higher quality construction than wood. Obviously, it's more expensive, but it's a better product. You can see in this conceptual section, there's 2 full levels of parking that extend out from underneath the building above, and I can show you that in the site plan too once we get to that. And then the third level is a half a level. So we're into bedrock. That is being mapped right now, the bedrock on the site. So we're uncertain how much blasting or bedrock removal we'll have to do, but we'll definitely have to. The extent of that is not known quite yet. Like I said, 14 stories above. Abby, can you maybe go to that site plan? Or Mark, you have it?
Yeah, the site plan.
I sent a colored one. It's a little easier to read. I don't know if you have that.
Is that the one you emailed but then said you didn't want us to show?
The site plan. I think you had it up earlier.
Oh, okay.
Talking about this?
We can use that if you want. The color one's just
I think it
easier to
may be
read.
that,
Yeah,
unless you deleted it out of the folder.
Is that one in our packet that says conceptual plan? That's a little too conceptual.
Sorry, Joe.
For us
when
to-
you
yeah.
emailed,
No, that's okay.
we took them out of the folder.
We were kind of fast and furious.
Yep.
Is this?
No, it's an internal.
Yeah, that's all right, Mark. I know you had it up like right at the beginning of the meeting, so that's
Which
why I
one
And
thought-
one
is
of
it?
these two.
Which one of these is it?
Probably the larger file that's aerial.
Concept aerial too. Yeah,
There
there you go.
we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So here you can see the site plan that we're proposing with this concept where, is this still on? Okay, I should get closer, I guess. Here you see the site plan we're proposing with this concept where the grades on the new road going north vary. It goes down and up. And so really the only access point to this site is on the far northwestern portion of the property. There's no other option because the grade from the road
Yeah.
to our property is too severe, the grade change. So we come in on the northwestern side, and my client wanted this to be more of, not just come into a sea of parking. So that's one reason for the 3 levels of parking is to free up some green space on the site and increase the quality and attractiveness of the project overall. So you'd come in on the northwest side, and you can see that there's a small amount of surface parking in front for convenience and guests and even for some residents. The access to the underground levels are around the north. So each of those 3 driveways, there's 2 on the northern side. The westernmost goes in the upper level parking. The middle one then goes into the middle level parking, and as you come around to the eastern portion of the building, yeah, right there, that goes into the lowest level of parking, which is the half level. So you can see that on the site plan, the yellow rectangular portion, that's the building that comes up 14 stories. The rest is an occupied roof deck there. So you can see there's a lighter color green with some plantings, and there's a pool and a pool deck. So that's just a concept design. We need to get into what exactly that's going to be as we move forward. But that's above the first level of parking, and would be a great amenity to the site. So there's a lot of trees to the east there. So when you're on that roof deck, you're going to be looking at the side of trees. So that's going to be a fantastic environment there. Another thing to mention on the site is that bike path. So we're proposing to leave the bike path where it is. So it's on our property or partially on the property. So we're going to leave it where it is. There's some slight modification that will need to occur as the new road gets built and how that's interacting with the bike path. So that'll all need to be worked out with engineering. But we do plan on keeping that as is. There's a resulting green space, and Mark, that's right where your cursor is now, so that that is not part of our property, but the part just to the north of there, that's just green space, yeah, that. So we're proposing to have that as an open space to give back to the community, and that can be designed as, however the city sees fit. We were brainstorming some ideas of, this secret park where families can bring their kids and go on a bike ride and go on an adventure and end up at this park. So we're anticipating for that, or some initial ideas for that.
What is the size of it?
I'm sorry?
What is the size? How big is it?
That little park.
That, probably a half to an acre,
Oh,
depending on where you draw the boundary. 1/2 acre to 1 acre.
Definitely not an acre.
What's that?
It's not an acre.
Definitely
No
not an
way.
acre.
Well, I guess it depends on where.
The dog run is
That's fine.
1,000, well, anyway. Can you zoom back out?
That's the elevation, that's not
Well,
the
that's the
square
elevation, not
footage.
the square footage.
Yeah, that's the elevation.
This is-
We had to really work the grades on this one.
Grade is really steep.
We actually worked it out pretty well on the balance of the site. So where you see those yellow lines are potential retaining walls. So obviously at a concept level, we don't have all that worked out, but conceptually, we can make this work. We need to get into the details now. The height is an interesting. Abby mentioned the FAA thing, and Jeff can speak to that when he comes up. But an interesting part of the height is not only that it's a very dramatic development and a real symbol for the city and a real catalyst for density in the city. But there's a tower adjacent to it just to the west, and that's kind of a limiting line where we have to keep our height limit, and that's the basis of our request for the FAA, is that there's a communication tower just to the west of there, and you probably can't read it, but there on that section that you were just at, it details where the height of that, and we are, depending on how the final grades work out, we're roughly 5 feet under that.
Towers
So that's a key point.
but this will be the tallest building, right?
I guess that depends. I'm not going to claim to know the height of every building in Middleton, but it will be substantially one of the taller buildings in Middleton. It's interesting to note, though, that the grade drops pretty dramatically as you go east into Greenway Center, and as you look back, there's a buffer of trees as you look back up that hill. And this building, as we move forward, we will obviously be submitting imagery from different vantage points that shows, what the visual impact of the building will be. But as you look back up that hill, you will see the building. It's not going to be an overbearing structure in the landscape. As you look back, the top of the building will rise above the trees. So you will see it a little bit, but it's not going to be like it's a 14-story building in the middle of a field. So the building was sited as well, where it is and at an angle, to not only maximize the views. There's going to be fantastic views everywhere from there, but there's going to be some nice Capitol views, but also to help preserve some of the views from the Pleasant View Golf Course and the clubhouse. We studied that a little bit, and I understand Vanderwall is doing a view shed of that too, a view shed analysis. So more light will be put on that issue, but we're pretty confident that our siting of the building helps minimize that. So right now, this is where we're at in the concept. You can see the unit mix and breakdown there, if you're interested. There's a variety of unit types, and that's to market to a wide range of potential residents. So we have some smaller junior one bedrooms, all the way up to some fairly large 3-bedroom apartments. So there's a very good mix that will appeal to a wide variety of people in income levels, which was important to Jeff and Jim. So we're still working through those mixes and in concert developing some exterior imagery. The concept for the exterior, as we're just starting to develop, is more of a prairie Wrightian aesthetics, and you'll say, hey, 14-story building.
Frank Lloyd Wright, yeah.
Frank Lloyd Wright. He's done some. So we want that. We want the exterior to have some of that influence. It's not going to be Falling Water or anything like that. If you guys are familiar with Falling Water, one of his more famous single-family structures, but we'll have some of that, those design cues and those design influences, high-quality materials, brick, stone, metal panel, but those will be in some subsequent presentations to you guys as we move forward. So that's a general overview. I don't know, Jeff, do you want to come up? Or Jim? Okay.
Joe, thank you very much. I am going to just pass out a few things that you can keep for later, because I don't want to make my discussion a long, protracted discussion that takes the rest of the night, because you've got an agenda yet to go. So just pass those out. Joe indicated that I was part of the development
Could you
team.
please go ahead and identify yourself for the TV?
My name is Jim Stoppel with Madison Property Management.
Okay.
And the actual owner is Jeff Strobel. And Jeff Strobel is I think a iconic name in Middleton. And so I wanted to share with you that a couple things. Jeff Strobel isn't a neophyte developer that's coming to Middleton to make his first $5 million and not care about what he develops or what he puts in here. Jeff Strobel has been a tremendous asset to the city of Middleton for years and years, probably 30 years plus. He was the developer predominantly of all of Greenway, built the 290,000 square foot Wisconsin Trade Center, 3 hotel units in Greenway. I did want to talk about the Trade Center for just a minute. In those days, those were all steel buildings predominantly. The height of a story on a steel building is significantly greater than the height of each story on a post-tension concrete. Your post-tension concrete is going to have an 8-inch, 9-inch, 10-inch slab with each unit above that, and perhaps 9-foot ceilings. Your steel construction is going to have 2-foot I-beams, in most cases, and larger. Then there's a pan that's poured above that. So the height of the Wisconsin Trade Center, I would guess, is probably very similar to what the height of the project that we're putting in front of you. Also, as you look at it from downtown Middleton, I think you're going to see a totally different view, because I think the trees that are surrounding it are going to cover the first 85 feet of the project before you even begin to see the building come up there. So it's going to be camouflaged as far as its height, if that's of concern. The city of Middleton only has so much land. I think land is the most precious commodity you have if you're ever going to hope to develop and build and grow. And 12, 14 stories, I think, is an absolute fantastic number. I just shudder when I see the 3, 4, 5 stories, because I say we're wasting so much land for the development that we could eventually get, the asset base that you could get. And so Jeff and his team has probably developed,
This is, the image you had was from Greenway looking towards the
I'm just showing
Wisconsin Trade Center, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm providing these because.
Okay, yeah.
That's the Trade Center.
Right.
I think this building, you will not even come close to looking that tall because of the tree line before you see it. Plus, the building we're looking at is not as tall as the Trade Center, I don't believe, once we finally get through with the post-tension concrete. In addition, Jeff has probably put $1,500,000 worth of square footage in Greenway over the last 25 years. Probably in excess of $4 million in tax base to the city of Middleton. I won't go through it, but just a few of the projects that he's built are the present branch channelization, Market Street Bridge project, Esser Pond, et cetera. So I don't want to go through all of them. He's also been involved in Greenway Station and Market West. Greenway Station is your huge 51 acre parcel on the in Greenway, with about 30 retail outlets at this particular point that bring visitors from all around. I happen to live in some other town to the south and west, and my bride thinks she ought to come to Greenway Station for all of the wonderful attributes it provides. So, in addition, Jeff was enveloped the USGS project and the research center without any TIF funds whatsoever. We originally started out with about a 250-unit project that was going to be 6 stories that would encompass or drastically reduce the green space that we've provided now. When the roadway came in and encroached on the parcel, plus the terracing that had to go with the roadway, when you looked at the bicycle path that was encroaching on the land that Jeff has been kind enough to at least allow it to be used for many years, it just became impossible once, especially the road, and we looked at the bicycle path. So that's what prompted the 5.7 acres to go with a 14-story building. And is it your average little building? I first had the privilege of meeting Jeff when I showed him through Venture, an apartment building that my family happens to own in just west of Hilldale on Seagull Road. And his same concept is very similar here. He has a 2,000 square foot social rooms on the top floor. Part of it with taking into an exercise facility, part of it's social rooms. It's called views, it's called amenities. When you looked at the type of units that were going to be developed, it's some rather substantial 2 and 3 bedroom units at Venture. We just don't have turnover in the 3 beds and the 2 beds. We have empty nesters that are there that are gone for the winter, come back in the summer. That's their home. They want a office, they want a guest room, and they want their own bedroom, and they want space, and they want some storage space, and an easy place to get in and out. And they don't necessarily want to be someplace where they walk out of their door at 7 o'clock at night and they have a panhandler asking them for money, or other people with a bottle of beer in a paper bag. So I think what he's envisioning is tremendous. But I also wanted to make sure that you had an idea that this isn't his first chop. He's absolutely been contributing to Middleton for a long time. The project here, I think, brings a lot to the city. He's building this 210 unit project on 5.7 acres, part of which the city is already using. So I don't think you're going to find many people that have that small of a density on that large of a parcel. Literally,
That large of a density and that small of a parcel.
You're correct.
Okay. Took me a minute there.
He has 210 units on 5.7 acres. Most of them are going to try to put that on about 2 acres, or 3 at the possibility. I just provided on the next page just a few items that what's this going to bring to the city of Middleton. I think you're going to have some tremendous opportunity for current residents that really want to not have to own their existing home. They're not have to take care of lawn care, snow removal. They're going to have the opportunity to move into this facility and sell their homes to the single-family buyer that Middleton so desperately needs. If you look at the tax revenue it's going to generate right now, that parcel is valued at about $850,000, I believe, bringing in about $15,000 a year in revenue. I think it's going to probably go to $50 million or in that neighborhood, bringing in $850,000 worth of tax revenue. So I think it's extremely beneficial to the city of Middleton, but it's not beneficial just because it's going to make Jeff Straubel a little money. In fact, when he met with your acting city assessor, Mr. Peters, to go over the project, to look at the TIF funding that was requested, et cetera, Mr. Peters was kind of shocked with the quality he plans on building, with the rents he's going to be offering, and probably the reduced net operating profit that Jeff Straubel is going to incur. But again, he's made a commitment to the city of Middleton for 30-plus years, so I think he's He's continuing that same vein on a parcel of ground that I think is unique, and it certainly is not set up for office facilities. I think this is the ideal, highest and best use of this facility, as well as highest and best use for the city of Middleton when you look at the money that's going to be generated over the next many years in tax revenue. However, to do that, he's also going to need a little help from the city of Middleton in the form of TIF money. Those 3 levels of parking construction are not going to be inexpensive by any means. The number of retaining walls and the amount of retaining walls are not going to be inexpensive. I think there are some things that need to be worked out relative to, is that a park that you want him to participate in? How does he handle the potential liability of the bicycle path that's already been there and he's been so kind and generous to allow the city to use for many years? There's some things that we need, there's some help that we need also to talk about the park fees, but I think you have a client that's contributed more to the city of Middleton than any other one I know in the last 30 years. And so I think as a team effort, we can get there with your help and his help. We appreciate the opportunity. Open to any questions or you may have.
Jim, I got a couple. Now, I guess you probably have done the soil testing there, so it's a pretty good soil. You don't need to do any piling or any of that stuff.
There is, maybe that would be a better opportunity than what we're looking at. Once we get, I believe, based on the initial soil analysis, once we get below 8 to 10 feet, we're in rock. So
There's a quarry across the street, so it's.
And I think a great portion of what came out of that quarry, when that was one of the things I
Yeah,
believe that
it's-
Mr. Straubel cleaned up, came for the bridge overpass when the Beltline was built to get to Greenway.
Okay, so that's not
So,
an issue.
No, there's no pilings necessary. This is rock. This is one of the most premier locations in all of Dane County.
And then you said there will be availability of affordable housing. You think this will be?
There's some smaller units, okay? Are they going to be affordable housing for large families? Perhaps not, but there's some smaller units that will afford the opportunity for those people that are coming into Middleton to work, that will have smaller, it isn't like New York where we have the mini housing by any means, but I think it will allow for affordable housing for a certain segment of people, as well as opening up the houses that some of your people are living in Middleton now, that will want to move to a facility like this to allow for more single-family housing for those younger generations that are coming up.
And I like your concept of having a park there because I have been wanting to having a park in the west of the Beltline and all Greenway Station. You got all those Galena properties, 560 units, and then the new units, there's no park. I mean, absolutely none. So this will be really good. I think the Market West, they may have some playground or something, but something is really needed there. It's just absolutely, and when you're going to have 210 units, there will be families, so they need to go to some park. So that's good that you're doing that. So.
Mayor, I think Jeff Straubel agrees with you 100%. We do from a management side. The goal is to figure out how it can work and be beneficial for everybody and be a win-win.
Okay, questions for Jim? Yes, Kurt.
So, again, when you do the submission, if you could, on this kind of regional context map, zoom out a little bit more and label all the features. Because I think when people just zoom in, they look at the density, but, and you know this from MPM, what is directly north of this facility?
It's the research part.
It's PPD, right? Which is how many jobs? 1,300, all right. I mean, so this is already we talk about building more housing near jobs. This is right there.
They can bicycle down the hill.
Right. And you're proposing all rental, or are you proposing any like condos or ownership units?
Is that a plausible event down the street at some stage? I don't think that's Jeff Straubel's plan at this particular moment. Will it be convertible? It's certainly going to be beyond condo quality.
Okay.
I believe in Dane County. Once you start with post-tension concrete, luxury vinyl plank, 2,000 square foot social room on the.
You're not putting in the really thin walls.
We aren't. There's soundproofing. It's absolutely quality. Deck sizes are going to be very, very generous. Front entryway will be rather lavish. You have the below-grade parking with a extremely large park light setting above that below-grade parking, as well as the exterior pool that is on the far end of the lower-grade parking structure. And we originally had lots more surface parking. We wanted to keep as much green space. We could actually make more green space. We have to work with the fire department. This project, as you see it on the site plan, which I appreciate your bringing up, Mark, has the entire roadway going around the southeast side of the building. I'm hoping with post-tension concrete, with fire suppression, et cetera, we can figure some way to try to reduce that amount of roadway so we can, again, increase the magnitude of green space, because I think the green space that's afforded here is tremendous.
Obviously, you'll talk to the fire department on that, because if they tell us they need an extra access road, you're getting an extra access road.
We have to march to the tune of the fire department, there's no
Which,
question.
again, in a 14-story building, we don't want to take any risks, and neither do you. So again, just for the architect, when you come back again, I think people would really want to see what's the view from, like, the PPD parking lot, looking south. Obviously, a view shed analysis from the golf course, and from these apartments just south.
From,
I mean, so people will want to see the renderings, because, as you know, as soon as people hear 14 stories, it's a bit mind-blowing for people, but, yeah.
Kurt,
I think it would
one-
be good to have one from here, too. This is, this is underneath by the Trade Center. And from down here, you can see this is the top of the hill here, over Raven.
The, relative to the tree line, I think is going to cover most of it. A major portion of it, as you're sitting close anyway, even in the middle of the city, I think the tree line's going to cover the first 80 feet. So I think there's just a tremendous opportunity for the city of Middleton to have another Jeff Straubel unique project.
I'm just wondering if the developer might want to consider, if as part of the TIF request or part of those negotiations, going for like a sustainability features or a LEED designation on the property. I don't know how much it's going to add to the cost, but
Jennifer?
I'd like to see the elevation, components of the elevations of the land, and of course the building sections and facades at some point, but particularly how the circulation around the building will work. I like that you talked about the circulation for the fire department, and maybe there's some things you could do with pavement or different types of treatments on the driveway that would make them appear to be more of a terrace than a driveway, but you could use it for fire access at certain points. But I like how the building's oriented. I think that's going to capture a lot of light and sun for all the units if there were to be those oriented that way. Do you know, are you going to design any porches or exterior components on the outside of the building for the apartment? Each unit will have a deck or something like that. Are you thinking?
Each unit will have a deck or patio, predominantly decks, and they will be spacious decks. They won't be a 4 foot wide or 4 foot deep deck. They will be much more spacious than that. The top floor will have, as I indicated, social rooms with a large deck going out beyond the social room, so that you can really have views, 360 views around this building just about.
The only other question or comment I would say is
Communication tower.
pedestrian and bike access. I know the bike path is going right past the building, but you may want to think about how a biker might get to the apartment building if they're not coming on the bike path. And you may want to, look at Dane County's plans for Pleasant View and see how that might happen. And even north of the site, if there's a way to access it, that's more pedestrian friendly. Those are just, I know you may not have control of some of those things, but it's just a consideration if there's a way to integrate that into the aspects of the site.
I can quickly answer and say that bike lanes are planned along Pleasant View Road with a path on the west side. Obviously, then there's this path crossing as well.
But that won't be constructed until 2023.
Understood. Yeah.
Excellent
Nothing
comments.
on the east side though, Mark. The path will be in the west.
Yeah, and there'll be a sidewalk on the east side.
There'll be a side. Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, there's a sidewalk on the east side. I'm 90% sure.
Michael, your thoughts?
I think this is a great use for this large site. I would agree with Kurt, looking at this and seeing the height relative to what's going on around it, I think would be an important consideration for us as a planning commission, but certainly for the citizens. Is this the right use? Is the scale right? But saving as much of the green space as possible and incorporating that as part of the site plan, I think is a good way to go. My question, so that the park area that we talked about as part of the dedication, that's heavily wooded now, is it not?
I believe so, yes.
Right, so we assume that would stay then, those trees would remain, or was it the intent as part of the construction site to clear any of those? Because clearly I think our preference would be to keep as many of those as we could, because there's, as I recall, there's some nice mature oaks
I think
in
that's
that grove of
going to be a
trees.
negotiation process with Parks Department as to what we can do. I can only share with you at this stage in the development process that Mr. Straubel has been most accommodating in the past and would do everything he could to maintain trees and greenway.
Great, yeah, not really our purview, but just a comment.
Be great to bury those power lines just looking at it now, but.
Leaf.
No, I think it's an interesting project. We'll have to see more to better idea of what is going on. I think the height thing is going to be of interest. I guess I would like a little better understanding of how the bike path came about and what the understanding was between the landowner and the city. Because I don't think the bike path would have just gotten built there without some kind of agreement or understanding, even though it might have been verbal. I think we need to understand what that was. And yeah, that's.
Dan?
I agree with all the sentiments. It's going to be very interesting to see as the concept moves forward, how it fits in from all the areas. So I would agree with Kurt. It would be very good to get some renderings back that give us different sight lines from 360.
So I'll make a motion that we refer to this to Park Rec and Forestry Commission.
Need a second.
Second.
Concept review.
Just that committee?
And Conservancy Lands.
Conservancy Lands, okay, yep.
And-
Yep, you're right.
So I just had two more quick questions or comments. Well, I guess first a question is, sometimes people ask us, do we really need more housing in Middleton? So I know you run Madison Property Management.
Yes.
I had one of your staff was in my office the other day.
Wonderful.
So I'll ask you the same question I asked him just publicly. You have 5,000 units under management?
Probably about 1,500 of those are condominium units that we manage, and the rest of them are apartments.
And
yes.
what's your vacancy rate? He said you had 70 units total vacant. That's less than 1%.
We're at that time of year, so yes, you're about right. Some of the larger 14-story units we manage is Constellation and Galaxy on East Washington. Vantage Point, we have no vacancies. Constellation Galaxy may have, if somebody has breached a lease to take a job transfer someplace, that may be available, but that's basically it. Our demand far exceeds our supply, no question. And
Wow.
the greatest need is still for quality housing, and if we're going to bring people like Exact Science with the construction they're going on with, Google continues to bring people here. Obviously, Epic in Verona continues to be a topic of conversation always. But there are other satellite businesses and ancillary businesses that are coming to Madison because of A, our housing, B, our great university, and the work ethic we have in the Midwest. We're going to need more housing for these people, or else they're going to go elsewhere.
So then the two questions, and again, for the architect, when you zoom out, you'll see that there's already a northeast to southwest building in the apartments just south, and then there's an axle of PPD that looks to be about the same, right? Do you see that if you could align your building so that it's consistent with that, right? Do you see how the, yeah, because I just don't know if your building is exactly aligned with that.
Northeast to southwest.
Yeah.
Basically.
And then the other question is, it would be helpful to see at least some
It's pretty close.
evidence or data where to ask whether you could make the project work at 12 stories with the same number of units, which would mean on some stories more ones and twos than threes. Just help us understand some of that trade-off, whether you could reduce the height and keep the number of units approximately the same by changing the internal configuration. Or if that's not possible, at least some indication of how you go about thinking about the program on the site.
I think that's more of a property management than a
Mike.
design, so they have a unit mix that they're trying
Right.
to make the market.
Kurt, I will try to answer that. I am the driving force behind the size of the units. Adventure, our ones, if studios people stay for a long time. Twos and threes, when I look at the unit mix we had there, and it's probably 40% ones, I would have put in many more ones or twos and threes than I did.
Yeah.
Because you have those people that literally want that quality, that type of housing, and that's what it is. The tough part is we're 85 feet before we see over the trees. So if I'm going to maintain the vision of the views and the view shed and what they can see from there, the lakes, et cetera, I need to have the height, number one. Number two, A, we get at least a little more density. B, we have social areas on that top floor that people can use and enjoy. I think I know the opportunity I had to go see the Ovation downtown Madison and look at the views from their social room with the cubicles, to be able to take your wine bottle and store it up there so you could go up and relax and enjoy those tremendous views is just beyond comprehension. And that is a vision, the same we have at Adventure, that is a vision that I had for this facility. I was excited, but when it was a 6-story building, but I can't tell you the level of excitement at a 14-story building and what that will do and what that does to maximize the utilization and maximization of our precious resource called land.
Yeah, but you could look at both options, 12 versus 14. And I don't think,
Or just some indication of how you arrived at the
Yes,
program and
yes.
what the market will bear and what the needs are.
The market will bear this far greater than my 6-story building.
yes, that's
Right.
clear. So I think you don't really have that many 3-bedroom units. From what I could see, there were more at the top level.
I want to say there was about 20-some, 25, three
Okay.
beds.
Okay, so there are
Oops,
some
right
at
here,
the
Joe.
each level, okay.
Yeah,
Yes, we had 27 3-beds,
Okay,
66 2-beds, 7 1-bed plus dens, 91 1-beds, and 19 junior 1-beds.
so what do you think your starting rent might be, you say affordable? Just just a wild thought,
Sure.
so.
The-
You don't have to,
The
it
lower,
doesn't
and I
have to
don't
be
have-
precise.
Excuse me, I don't have it in front of me at this particular moment. Those lower junior, those junior beds are probably going to be in the area of $1,200 to $1,400. But they're
The
absolutely.
lower one's no view.
Yes, and but the quality, and the lower ones with no views may be a little less than that, but they have the amenities of the rest of the building, of the big courtyard, of the rooftop terrace. The amenities are huge. But yes. Oh, Even with the treetop, it's a much better view than if you're sitting in downtown New York looking 30 feet away at the neighbor's balcony.
It
So,
depends on who your neighbor is.
True.
so the next question is, you already know the Pleasant View Road is set for 2022 or 2023, and how that will impact, so you're already aware of it, so.
We're aware of that. That's a major driving force that forced us from the six-story building project that we started out with because of the encroachment by that road and what it was going to take both for the road itself as well as the terracing to get back to the level of this parcel.
Okay, thank you. Michael, anything? Jennifer? Okay, the motion is to refer it to PRFC and CLC. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
We are on to item number 6. This is the concept review for tax incremental financing number 3 incentive for Town Place Suites Hotel at 3055 Diamond Valley.
So the applicant, Steve Doran, is here from Kingsland Hospitality, and I'm sure that he'd be interested in
Okay.
making a presentation. In terms of our staff review of this, the TIF request, at the time of application, when they came forward for design review and their conditional use permit, was not known at that time. They did not have their full soil report, that they have since received their full soil report. That's when they came back to the city and requested TIF. And I want to make that very clear, especially because we did have a couple of other hoteliers reach out to us at the time of the application, and we stated that there was not a TIF request associated with the project, and that has now come back before you. We have some concerns about this because according to our own room tax collections, we're seeing a slight decline overall in room tax collections in the city. And we've been meeting quarterly with our tourism director to review that. Our TIF team, which is made up of our city administrator, Mike Davis, finance director, Bill Burns, and I, do have some concerns that the additions of more hotel rooms in Middleton could have a negative effect on other properties in the city. And while we don't typically review marketability of a development, when there is a TIF request associated with it, we think that it's prudent to take that into consideration in our recommendation. There are a lot of competitors in the market in Middleton. We have 7 existing hotels, and we have 1 hotel that's conditionally approved, and that's the Avid, I believe is the name of it, on Deming Way. And then we have 1 hotel that's currently under construction. And the city's past practice has not been to provide direct assistance to hotels, but to use TIF with general infrastructure improvements for overall development areas, like was done with the Confluence Pond and also the Deming Way Bridge near the Town Place Suite site. We do understand the merits of this project, and we have reviewed the soil report, and it's quite extensive, and we firmly believe that the soils on this site would only support a 1-story building without TIF incentive. So, you know, there is certainly a trade-off there. If this property didn't develop as this hotel, we would likely be fielding another TIF request for another development there unless we got like a 1-story use, like a retail use or a 1-story office type use. We also understand, and Steve has made the case, that an extended stay hotel is in less direct competition with most of the other hotels in Middleton. And I think the one that's most closely related is the Staybridge Suites in downtown. And also, I also wanted to point out that the city did recently allocate TIF for another hotel project that is currently under construction, and that was also for poor soils. So we basically left it that if the plan commission is supportive of a TIF incentive for this development, our staff would suggest supporting 50% of the cost to remediate the poor soil conditions, which we would anticipate to be around $700,000. And also we would recommend the inclusion of a solar array that would maximize the rooftop capacity of the building and help, the city reach our goals for 100% renewable energy community-wide. Regardless of whether the Plan Commission decides to support TIF, we think that this should be brought forward in a future TIF policy for consideration so that the staff, Plan Commission, Finance Committee, and Council is kind of taking a look at these types of projects that have a lot of direct competition and kind of utilizing the same approach on all. So we're not treating one project unfairly compared to another project. So that's all I wanted to say, and Steve is here and has been very consistently good to work with and has provided us with a lot of information to help us.
Go ahead, Steve.
Great, thank you, Abby.
Identify yourself and, yeah.
Yep, so my name is Steve Dorn. I'm with the development team with Kenseth Hospitality. We also have here tonight with us the contractor, Aaron Kosichka with McGann Construction, the landowner, Gene Whitish, and her representative, Tom Phillips, and then Andrew Miller, who has graciously been helping us manage the soils that we have been encountered with. He's with Midwest Drilling. So they're available for questions or to talk through anything as well.
We need better IT. There we go.
Can anybody hear me?
It's a really slow computer.
Oh, is it echoing?
No,
Did I just get rid of it and talk loud?
No, it blinked out on the screen.
Oh,
you weren't
okay.
seeing the screen.
All right, so as Abby mentioned, we did come back through a couple months ago for Plan Commission approval for the Town Place Suites. Had no intention of using TIF. Typically, the Kenseth Hospitality Group does not use TIF for hotels. They're market rent payers, and so that there was no intention. We were under the gun to try to get this project under construction this fall. That was our intent. And so we opted to get Plan Commission approval for the project with the goal that we could try to get under construction this year yet. And that is no longer possible at this point. We did get the soil reports back shortly after Plan Commission approval, and they're the worst soils I've ever seen. And Andrew Miller had even commented the same thing. I mean, we shared the soil borings report with you, but it's pretty bad. And we were a little blindsided by it. We definitely expected some undercutting on this site. We consulted with John Livesey, who built Spectrum, and he had a little bit undercutting, but nothing like this. The soils dramatically shifted to primarily organics as you came around the corner on Deming to this site. So a little blindsided.
So is it the whole site is bad or part of it is good or?
It's really the whole site, and it kind of continues into the rest of the business park. There's only there's very few areas left in that business park that the soils are really buildable above a one-story building without a deep foundation pier system. So. As Abby mentioned,
Again, a one-story building, you'd be floating it, put geofoam and all that.
Well, I mean, and again, a one-story building here, you still need a helical pier system, which is going to be $300,000-$400,000 of still, pier systems and site work. The only possible way that I've been told by CGC, who did the borings for us, to do a one-story building without a helical pier or a geopier system would be like a stand-up metal building, which I can't imagine the city would ever approve here. So I think this is going to be, if the city wants to continue to see density in this development moving forward, I think this is going to be something that could continue to come up in this business park. The pilings that were designed for this have to go about 200 feet down into the ground. There's 122 of them. The budget we got alone for just the pilings from Midwest Drilling was $1.225 million. Again, there's about $300,000 of additional site work on top of that for GeoGrid to pour the building slab inside, GeoGrid for the parking lot, and some undercutting. Again, that we could have managed without TIF. It's really the pier system that is giving us problems. I've had a lot of conversation with Mike and Abby and Bill over the past couple of weeks relative to competition in Middleton. And while we understand that no hotel operator would ever want competition, we really sincerely believe there's excess demand in this market, especially for an extended stay product. Kinzeth Hospitality's been operating in this market for about 16 years. They built one of the first hotels in this general area back in 2004, which was the Country Inn and Suites, and they've owned and operated that since that period. So they have very, very good data on what the market is. That hotel is currently running an occupancy of about 76%. It's only increased through the years. There have definitely been a couple of times, in 2008, 2009, where that decreased. But overall, it's been a very, very strong hotel for their portfolio. Kinzeth has been in business for about 40 years. They've got about 85 hotels across the Midwest. All of the hotels that they own and operate, for the most part, are either a Hilton, a Marriott, or an IHG brand. I think it's important to note that Kinzeth would never have any interest in building more product in this market if they thought it would in any way hurt the Country Inn and Suites. It's the closest hotel to the proposed Town Place Suites, other than the Courtyard, which is right next to the Country Inn and Suites. The other thing we provided,
Courtyard is owned by?
a different
North
operator.
Central.
Okay.
Correct.
That's North Central, and you have the Country Inn and Suites.
That is correct.
Okay, the hotel names always sound the same.
Yeah, that is correct. The other thing that we shared with the staff, we shared our entire pro forma. I mean, once we found out about the soil borings, we realized this project was on life support at best. And so we shared our entire pro forma. We shared our what's called a Smith Travel Research Report, which really gives accurate data to hotel operators on exact occupancy percentages for other hotels in the market. And one of the things I think the Smith Travel Research Report shows is just the consistency of occupancy in Middleton. For the past 5 or 6 years, Middleton's consistently been around that 70% occupancy mark for hotels. And we grabbed a whole wide spectrum of hotels in the Middleton area, really the most comparable set. And anytime you see that percentage, get to that 60% plus mark, you kind of start looking at that market like, hey, this is a market we should maybe consider building a hotel in. When it's at 70%, you want to have shovels in the ground and building new product in that market, especially in a market like this where there's such limited extended stay demand. It's one of the biggest things that the Country Inn and Suites is always full at capacity at, is their bigger suites for extended stay. Another thing that was really interesting in the STAR report is typically when you see a new hotel open, you'll see that percentage drop by about 5%, and then it'll take a year or two to rebound back over a couple of years. And back in 2018, the True opened, which is right down the street, and was part of our comparable set. And in the year that the True opened, the percentage dipped down by 2 basis points. I think it went from 69.7 to 69.2%, and then rapidly started climbing again. So it wasn't even this hotel market absorbed that hotel and didn't even drop a beat in occupancy according to the STAR report.
That one opened up 2018.
That one opened in 2018, right?
And the more recent room tax data that Bill went through, second quarter 2019?
Well, remember, that's in the city of Madison over there, but it's still part of the comp site because it's part of the trade
Oh, it's in
area.
the city of Madison.
But it's part of the comp site. I mean, it's the trade, it's the hotel trade area, as we would evaluate it, but.
Your evaluation included part of the city of Madison, and Abby, yours did not.
Ours was strictly Middleton. And I think also their evaluation looked at the hotels that they felt like were comparable to what you're proposing, correct?
Correct, yeah, so.
Full of
Comparable
hotels.
market scale.
Yeah, so I think, in the comp set that we selected the Staybridge, the Residence Inn, the Hilton Garden Inn, the Courtyard, the Country Inn and Suites, the True, and the Homewood.
Not the Fairfield.
I believe the Fairfield was in there as well. So all the Middleton. We didn't grab, we didn't grab like the Comfort Inn. We grabbed hotels that we thought were very relevant. In the Smith Travel Research, I could talk about Smith Travel Research all day, but all of these hotels are required to submit their daily occupancy and room rates to Smith Travel Research by their brand. So it is the most accurate information you could ever get on hotel occupancy and rate statistics.
Required to do that. So
What's that?
Why are you required? I'm just curious.
So as a franchisee, Marriott, IHG, and Hilton require you to submit that. In turn, Smith Travel Research agrees not to give out data on any one specific hotel. You have to pick a grouping. So the reason the brands like it is because it allows them to see what the occupancy is in any given market, and they can use that to say, hey, it's time to put another hotel in this market. It's a super strong market like this is.
What would be the effect on occupancy rates of the hotel under construction right now is the Holiday Inn
Holiday Inn Express, correct.
And that is 80-some rooms?
Yeah, somewhere
No?
close to it, 80 or 90.
I think it was 82, but I could be wrong.
And that has not come online yet, right?
That has not come online.
It's moving forward, though. It looks good.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but again, if you think of the Holiday Inn Express, they're looking for the average transient business traveler. Our target demographic is that guy that's got a stethoscope in his shirt pocket and he's in town for maybe 3 to 6 weeks on a contract project with Exact Sciences or Spectrum. I know Spectrum was in to see Abby the other day, and they were super excited to have this hotel, next door. They felt there was a huge demand for it. For their employees coming to the market, as well as people visiting their office building. So, as Abby mentioned, the TIF request is for $1.2 million. It's a 9-year payback. It represents 75% of the increment, which is identical to.
Mark, can you just pull up the increment calculation that Bill did that's in the packet? There we go.
So it represents 75% of the increment, which is identical to what the Holiday Inn Express was granted. I think that might have been how Bill ran his analysis, is using that as a figure to get to a 9-year payback. What a lot of people don't quite always grasp with TIF is, the 1.2 is not what comes into our pocket and is used for the project costs.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
It's paid. It's all the risk of this TIF is on us. So if we don't generate the increment, the TIF is not paid to us. It's paid to us as we pay real estate taxes over a period of 9 years. And so the time value of money of that 1.2 million after borrowing costs for it is under $1 million. The other problem with TIF that our government has changed recently in the last couple of years is we actually have to pay income tax on that TIF. So it's not money that we can receive and just directly put into the project. We do have to pay the income taxes on it first. So if you kind of look at the net to us after the time value of money, or the borrowing costs, I should say, and the taxes, it represents really about 37% of our total soil remediation costs.
So is that a recent change, that where you have to pay the taxes The TIF
that-
even to begin with?
That change went into effect at the end of 2018.
That was in the 2017 tax code change. It's treated as a grant, even though it's structured as a loan.
Right.
You're paying income tax on it as if it's realized. So it's not like a capital gain that you can shelter with a 1231 or whatever. Mike's little tax dodges there. I'm just kidding. But most real estate investors know how to shelter those gains until you realize them. But now it shows up as income,
Yeah.
right?
It does, yes.
Yeah, you used to be able to set up an S corp structure, and as long as you held the property, you didn't have to pay. You never paid the income tax on it, so it was a real net.
So this will be yearly then, right? You don't pay it upfront.
No, you realize
Pay
it.
it when you realize
You
it.
pay it
Okay,
when
when
you
you
realize
realize
it.
it,
Yeah,
okay.
we pay it when we realize it over the 9-year period. That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
Versus an
Because-
upfront TIF, if you were receiving those dollars up front, you'd have to pay the tax on the entire amount when received.
Our group realizes that the TIF is a tall ask for this project. This is a long-term hold for our group. We're committed to this project long-term hold. So over the last couple of months, we've done a lot of really soul searching and grinding on this project to see how else we can make it work. And one of the other ways. The avenues we've looked at is the sustainability. I know that's something really important to Middleton. We just did a project in Monona where we were able to incorporate a solar system on the roof. I don't know that the payback is quite there yet. We're starting to see some of the benefits of it. It does make sense for a longer-term hold. It is something we would like to do here and incorporate into our project. The solar array we're looking at would cost about $150,000. It'd be about a 65 kilowatt system. And again, we realize this adds more project to our cost, takes us in the other direction, but we're also happy with the payback on that $150,000. The current payback on that would be about a 7 to 8 year payback for that investment. There's also a federal tax credit of about 30% that we're able to take advantage of by putting that up. And we also understand it's consistent with Middleton's mission. So as part of the TIF request, we would commit to add a solar array on the roof as well as a couple of parking stalls for electric car charging. We did that in another municipality as well and worked out very well with MG&E. So, like I mentioned, over the last few months, we've really pushed and pulled on everything in this project. Our group has gone back to the seller. The seller stepped up and paid for some things that they weren't originally going to. Our group is committed to invest a substantial amount more of equity into this, and we're just hoping the city of Middleton is able to participate as well and make this project happen.
Any questions for Steve? Michael?
Not at this time.
Bert?
So I have a lot of questions, and just, for the record, Steve has been very responsive and called me with and answered questions and sent over his pro forma on. So it's always difficult normally when Plan Commission is asked to review a TIF request if we don't see the developer's pro forma. I know Mike and I have talked about this, because it's hard to know what we're really voting on as a Plan Commission if we don't see that full analysis. So I guess a couple of the questions, just to get on the record about this, is, and I guess this is also for Abby, how did staff come up with the $700,000 number?
We looked at what the city did for Costco. They had soil issues, similarly poor soils, and the TIF incentive on that project covered about 50% of the extraordinary costs.
Okay.
So we kind of just looked at the overall number, and I think it was around 1.4, and we looked at 50% of that.
Okay, so that's 50% of the extraordinary costs. Whenever we see a deal like this, there's always a concern about whether the seller would be willing to write down the land costs as part of the kind of equity play in the deal. Can you talk to that for a minute?
The seller's not a partner in the deal
Okay.
at all. Lee Bruce and Gene Whitish are the sellers, and they will have no equity in the project. We're purchasing it outright.
But they're willing to
Yeah,
reduce the land cost to,
Yeah, if you remember, so when we originally got this project approved, we were required to get that additional fire lane access. So what they were doing is they were going to charge us for that, the land value, and they're basically throwing that land value in with the idea that hopefully this project will stimulate more development, and they'll be able to recapture those costs with an additional project next door.
I mean, I guess whenever we look at a TIF request, again, not always seeing the numbers, but just for people's benefit, what's total project cost, if I remember, is about 14 million?
Yeah. Make sure I'm not.
And your equity, I mean, I think we should always ask when a developer comes in for a TIF, what their equity portion is.
Yeah. So, so we can talk through this, but
Yeah.
we're putting a substantial amount of equity in this. One of the things that Kinzeth is very adamant about is not leveraging up deals. They've been in business 40 years. They've never given one property back to the bank. And so, we're at about a 70% loan to value on this. We amortize these on 20-year loans,
70% loan to value on the first mortgage, but then when you add in the TIF, that adds to the debt.
Right.
That's not in that 70%.
It's a separate TIF loan.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, so our
So the
our
equity
real
percent's about 30%, 31, 32%
of what?
of the total project cost is in your equity.
Yeah, it's about 31%.
So Steve, I mean, I think the question that Kurt's asking, so, I mean, clearly, when you put this under contract, it was at a certain dollar amount.
Yep.
Anticipating normal soil conditions?
Well, we knew there was some soil issues here. We knew we'd have some undercutting. We budgeted about $300,000 for undercutting, and
But
we
not,
did.
not to the extent that what you're actually
We didn't know we'd
finding.
we didn't know we'd have to do a deep pile foundation systems, right?
But, I mean, so I think the question, in fairness to the city is, so what has the seller done? Because clearly the land is worth less now.
Oh, right.
And given that it's much more difficult to build on. So if you're asking for the city to provide this amount of TIF funding, I think it's fair to the Planning Commission, ultimately council, that they understand, what is the seller willing to do based on what was negotiated originally, now that you found these really poor soil conditions.
Right, yeah, I thought I answered that with the easement land area we had to buy. That'd be about $150,000 that we no longer have to pay for, so they basically effectively reduced that. The other thing that, one thing that's really hard for us is, we're buying the land for about $12 a foot. So we're not, in our mind, before we even went under contract, it took, 8 months to negotiate we're not overpaying for the site, or we're not using TIF as a way to get money in the seller's pocket. The seller doesn't have to do anything, and they've stepped up, and kicked in some dollars to help this happen. The bulk of it's come from us.
Go ahead. Jeannie, why don't you come to the microphone?
Yeah, and this is a concern I had raised with Steve, is that one of the worries always on a TIF deal is if the developer overpaid for land and then comes to you for TIF to make them whole, that doesn't seem like that's really adding value for the city's perspective.
Yeah,
I'll
ahead.
go back.
Some-
I need to
some-
go back. Gene Whitish, LB Land Investments. I've been part of the park project since the city of Middleton approached Lee Bruce about developing that land and bringing it into the city as part of TIF 3. We broke ground on that park in 1998, and had the city not participated in the TIF, that park would not have been developed. Their business would have been operating on that land. They were functioning with a nursery. Their inventory control was there. It was adjacent to the major business that they brought to the city. And the city wrote the GDP for that park. So that's how badly the city wanted that land for development. And we worked through, on the front end, we personally guaranteed the initial investment in that park, guaranteed increment creation, and we removed that guarantee within 2 years, well in front of what we were required to do. So it really comes down to the same thing that was previously just presented about the land and what land you have available. And yes, it is the bottom of a lake bed. We knew that. Everybody knew that. We did years of studying on this property. We had to work with the Pheasant Branch people. We even got the Pheasant Branch people to come forward and support us before we went forward with that park. And when you look at the multiple millions of dollars that have been created in increments since that time, this is a one-time investment to have a 4-story supporting development that supports everything else in that park and allows other things to go forward, and then you have it for years to come. So no, we didn't gouge on the land, we're not out asking more than market, and it appraises, and it comes down to what do you want to earn in tax dollars? Because if we put up a bunch of single-story metal buildings, you're going to be stuck with them for the next 30 to 40 years, minimum. So, thank you.
Any questions for Jean?
Yeah, I wasn't saying that you gouge them on the land, it's just something, I think we need to do our due diligence in the TIF request, and oftentimes we're not showing what the land costs are. Right.
There's a direct relationship to what the land value is.
Please go to.
Yeah.
There's a direct relationship to the land value and the building value that you can afford to put on it. So from a standpoint of if the determination is made that all that can go on that land now going forward for the life of the park is single-story metal buildings, it's going to have a devastating effect on all the other properties in that park. Not just what's left in the land and out of our pocket. It's going to be what goes forward because appraisals are built on that. People's overall land value of their rent structures. It's all, anybody that has worked in real estate development understands that. So we are some of the last highway frontage. So yes, the land on the highway is running at about the $12 a square foot. The land off the highway is running anywhere from $6 to $8 a square foot. And that's not inconsistent with anything else that is in this Dane County area.
So this is.
This is considered to have highway access?
It's highway visibility.
Visibility.
Yeah, and I think with a hotel, and you can correct me, if you can see it,
Yeah.
is usually a,
If you can see
You
it
know,
from
with
the
the internet,
highway.
it's become less of an issue, but it's more of the location here and the accessibility to it. But seeing it is important still.
Closer to the mic, sorry.
I was just going to say, with the internet, being directly on a highway has become less and less of an issue in the hospitality industry, but it's still important. The accessibility and the visibility, we're kind of getting, with this site, the best of both worlds, because we'll have the Spectrum parking lot there, that which will basically preserve our visibility to the highway indefinitely.
Any more questions for?
Just for Abby, this is TID 3, the expenditure period ends in what year?
20.
Well, the TIF ends in 2030. For new developments, 2025, but we can continue to repay
Right.
a TIF loan through 2030.
And so that's also part of the kind of aggressive nature of this TIF, is we've got, my math is escaping me, less than 11 years left in the TID. So, if this project doesn't go through, another project would come in a year later and probably ask for similar, but you have less time to pay for it.
Well, the big thing is that the mistake was, or at least I thought mistake was made, first to give TIF to Holiday Inn, Express. Before that, we didn't do that. That was, and now I think if we do that, that everything, all other hotels are going to ask the same, so,
That was in TID 3 as well?
yep.
Yeah. And Abby, do you know what % of their extraordinary costs they asked for?
Well, they're requesting 1.2, and what we saw was 1.4 in
No,
extraordinary.
the Holiday Inn, I'm sorry, I was not there.
Oh, okay. I cannot remember that off the top of my head, but I know that they received $850,000 TIF incentive. I can't remember what percentage of their extraordinary costs that represented.
Ours would be a higher dollar per room to develop that, a higher assessed value, just given the extended nature of the hotel.
So higher assessed value per room.
Higher assessed value per room. Yep.
Lee,
Again,
you-
I understand the concern of every hotel potentially wanting to ask for TIF. We're not asking for TIF to build a hotel. We're asking for TIF to fix a soil issue here. If we didn't have soil issues here, we wouldn't be asking for any TIF. So
And a office complex in the same site would,
anything that's above, again, anything above 1 stories here is going to require deep foundations. You could do a 1-story building with helical piers, but you're still talking $300 to $400 just for helical piers.
yeah, I'm already forgetting the name, Miramont, the Behavioral Health Center was just floating it on geofoam and piers, and they got TIF for that, right?
Yeah, they did, but then after the flooding, they reconsidered the geofoam, and that's what has caused the delay in their project.
So how about Spectrum, Fiskars, Median Hunt? Did they also have put the helical piles, or how did they?
I don't recall the specifics of those, I'm sorry. I wasn't involved with any one of the three, in the TIF negotiations, and I can't recall.
Mark, did you?
So was Fiskars.
Oh, yeah, and I would say that Spectrum and Fiskars definitely had a TIF incentive, but I don't recall what the extraordinary costs were. I'm sure that they were soil related.
But what I'm hearing them say is that regardless of this being a 4-story building for a hotel or 4-story for office, it would be the same request.
Same requirement.
Similar request.
Same requirement.
Same requirement.
Same mitigation requirement.
Let's all be honest that a 4-story office wouldn't raise the same kind of political optics as subsidy for, and I know this is not what you're saying, but a subsidy for a hotel when it's perceived that we already have a sufficient number of rooms and that occupancy is a little soft. Now, again, I think it was helpful for you to send us your market study, which showed that perception may not be true.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're not, if we felt we wouldn't risk our capital or risk our asset down the street if we didn't feel that the market was strong here.
Costco got TIF too. A lot of people don't realize.
Right. Almost anything in that park is gonna need some TIF just because of the soils. Which again, it was a lake, now it's all drainage tile and.
The other thing with a hotel, and I don't know how much the city digs into this, Abby and I talked a little bit about this, but the hotel room, there is the 9-year period, right, where we get 75% of the increment, the city gets 25%. But the hotel room tax from day one, 100% goes to the city. And that's about $40,000 a year right out of the gate.
Well,
the concern is.
70% of that stays with the tourism, city gets
Correct.
30%.
Correct.
And I guess how many other hotels do we have in TID 3?
And you got,
They're probably all into three.
Probably all into
actually.
3. I mean, the concern that people will express is if some of your occupancy cannibalizes some of theirs, those values might decrease, or they might fail to keep up the quality level of the product, maybe downscale it to a different product, and that might, so that on this particular project, it might generate increment, but the total increment, right, I'm just saying, these are the arguments that people would look at if it reduces the value of the other units, which it's impossible for us to predict what that would look like.
Again, we wouldn't compete with ourselves if we didn't feel that we were a differentiator, a completely different product that's not penetrated this market, the extended stay product, and if we thought we would compromise our existing hotel.
How did you justify the Holiday Inn then?
I think that was really a mistake as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know, do you know, Abby? So they had the extraordinary cost, or what was it? I mean, it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I can say, like, when the Holiday Inn TIF request came forward, we had a 3-person TIF team, and there were 2 people who were opposed to it and 1 person who was supportive on our staff. And the person who was supportive of it brought it through the process and by the decision makers.
And again, I think when we look at a TIF request as the Plan Commission, we don't see any of the developer's financial information. So, I mean, so I teach TIF in public finance, so if you were gonna look at it as a city, right, you'd wanna know what the developer's cash on cash or internal rate of return is with and without TIF. You'd wanna look at all of these financials, and we don't see any of that. We just assume that obviously council or finance committee would see that, to look at whether the numbers are correct. We just review it whether the project is consistent with the TID plan, whether there's some benefit to the overall development patterns within the TID, and that's also the increment that's generated. So we never know, for example, in this case, right, which one of the reasons we're having a hard time deciding is if we're told that the costs are 1.2 million, that's only, as I've told you, that's only half the equation. We don't know what the actual amount that we should give, somewhere between 0 and 1.2 million, that would be enough to make the project financially viable, but not too much that the city is accused of being overly generous in TIF. Right, I'm just saying that for the public benefit. So when we, I agree with Abby that that was probably a mistake on the hotel. We don't see what all that is. So we don't know whether post-TIF, we've just made a no-go project into a viable project, or whether we've actually just thrown money into a development that would have occurred anyway. Right? I think in your case, the soil report is quite clear that if you don't have TIF assistance for the soils, you can't make this project work, right?
That is correct.
Because there is this but-for test in state law. But it's hard to know, once you agree that but-for, right, how much, what's the right amount to give? Should it be 75%? Should it be 50%? You're asking for 1.2, the city staff say 700. There's no possible way we on Plan Commission could recommend to council what that number should be, right? So, and this is what Mike and I have been talking about for years, that we don't, other cities would require a developer to show all those financials to the, at least to the city finance committee, so that they could decide what's the right amount. Okay. And end of sermon there, so.
So, but we have done that.
Right.
Right.
You've given the full pro forma to staff.
Michael,
So I think the question for us is, you know, I guess, Kurt, as a planning commission, is we support some degree of TIF to help them in offsetting the poor soil conditions, right? Because we can't really come up with a number. We know what staff is recommending, but yeah, I don't know how you hone in on a particular amount,
I don't think you necessarily have to hone in on them all.
right?
Question is, just as you say, do we support the concept?
Maybe this helps you, but
Okay, so Mark has pulled up the minutes from the Holiday Inn. So it was 645,000 It was 75% increment to the project. That's, I think, why Bill ran that 75%. And then it would be a 6-year payback period. And if I recall the discussion, probably the only reason we approved it was that this 6-year payback period seemed to offer little risk because of the short term and the small amount relative to the total cost. Right, you got to use the microphone just for him. Yeah, we don't know if that's true, and that's,
So you're making that assumption, but based on what you just said, you don't know that from
No,
those minutes either.
and
Finance
so
director.
we make the vote, we should probably be more precise in how we make our vote, that we're not recommending a particular dollar amount. But the request amount recommended by staff was $645. So when we looked at it, it seemed that these features, relative to what is in our purview, seemed reasonable to us, right? The soil condition, the overall benefit to the development plan in the area, and then the shortened payback period. But we don't know if that payback period is correct, obviously.
The one thing I would like to draw attention to is the difference between developer finance TIF and when we started in the park, the city contributed the money, the city borrowed the money, and the developer guaranteed the increment. So the difference today is that the developer doesn't get the benefit of the city's borrowing rate, which is huge. The developer is going on the line for that additional debt. So why they would borrow more money than they need, God only knows. That would make no sense. On top of what you're already doing, with the rest of the project. So there's a couple of things that are built into the changes in the structure that you made by changing it to developer finance TIF. And you're not on the hook for it, because if they don't perform, it's his debt.
Yeah, it
So whether
became
it's 6 years or 9 years.
Yeah, it became possible because of the lower interest rates. I think it wasn't possible earlier, so. Anyway, so where do we want to go? So, do we want to
Yeah,
make
look,
some recommendation?
we didn't come up with our TIF number to try to pick a number that was consistent with Holiday Inn or pick the number that we could get as much from the city. I mean, a lot of things have changed even since then, right? I mean, that deal didn't have to pay income taxes. So our clip all of a sudden is 40% off of what they would have received because they were able to use shelter that we weren't able to. I mean, we're here really just to say, here's all our cards. We're putting them on the table. This is what makes our project make sense. It takes us till middle of year 5 to get to about a 7% return on our cash. We're putting more cash in this deal than we have in most hotel deals because we really feel confident in this middle market, the Middleton market. But this is a situation where we really need Middleton to be a partner with us to make this happen.
And I think generally we supported the project, of Planning Commission originally. So it's not like we don't like the project.
Yep.
Obviously, this is something that's come up that was unanticipated. I think there's, from a staff standpoint, there's a need for consistency. I don't know what that means. I guess I would recommend that we refer this back to staff to come back with a recommendation to, if we, the Planning Commission, support the use of TIF here, an amount or a recommendation that is consistent with what we've done in the past. I guess I would support that and also add to the fact that whether it's an office building, whether it's a hotel, whether it's an apartment building, if it's more than one story, to develop this site, you're going to have to do something with this soil.
So is that your motion then?
So didn't that already happen though, Mike? Didn't the staff already recommend 50%?
Recommend anything, but we basically said in the report that if the plan commission is comfortable supporting TIF, we would suggest 50% of the soil remediation costs and then also the solar array.
So I guess what I'm saying as a possibility, so looking back at what was done previously, it was 75%, but there was a quicker payback. that being 6 years versus the 9 that's being suggested here. And, I guess the question for you, Steve, is, does that work for you? Is that a deal killer?
The 50%?
Well, I think what we're saying is 75, and I maybe need to run the numbers on this as well, but it would be 75% with a 6-year payback, consistent with what we did on the other hotel development.
So figure out what that.
Yeah, I don't know
present
what
value is.
I don't know what those
Well, I
numbers.
mean, it's quick math, right? I mean, it's about,
Just going to be.
it's going to lop off a third, basically, of,
Yeah,
it's going to get us down to that 50.
67% of what you're asking for, more or less, right?
Right, I mean, it's, yeah.
So can you make it work with that?
We can't make that work.
And, again, just to get to the policy issue, we should not be negotiating in public
Right.
about a TIF dollar amount at the plan commission level when we haven't seen all those. Yeah, and so, I mean, you were kind enough to show your pro forma, the cash-on-cash return doesn't get anywhere close to what most investors would think is a normal until year 6 or 7, right?
Right, yeah, we're in this for the long term, clearly.
Okay, so what do you want to do?
Well, so,
Kurt?
I mean, I think we're all in agreement that the extraordinary soil conditions on this particular site that are unique to this site mean that but for TIF, you wouldn't get 4-story building on this site, right? And that it is to the advantage of the development pattern in the TID that there be a 4-story building on the site rather than a 1-story building, right? And so that's the kind of thing I think that's within our purview, is to say that therefore some amount of TIF would likely be necessary, given the unique soil conditions on this site.
So is that your motion then?
Trying to figure out how to express that in a motion.
Well,
I mean, we have another option, which is just to, ultimately, we just make a recommendation to council, and so they're gonna have to look at this, and I suspect they will ask, as I told you, they'll ask many of these same questions.
Make a motion.
The YouTube channel.
Make a motion to approve the concept, and you send it to finance and council. Finance will come up with a number. And like you say, ask many of the same questions.
Tell people where to watch in the video.
No.
So you want to make that motion then?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we need a second.
I'll second it.
Before you
Can we clarify the motion?
clarify it,
Mhm.
so what I typed was to approve the concept, to let the finance committee determine the amount of the TIF incentive.
To go, yes.
Can,
Up with the calculation for the. Yep.
I guess, can I ask that the language be amended to be a little more technical, that we find that there's extraordinary soil conditions on this site that make a 4-story building require TIF, and that a 4-story building is advantageous to the overall development plan within the TID, right? Because I think sometimes, I know from some of my friends that they're like, why did you approve TIF on this? And it's like, well,
Okay, I think
so we
that-
want to be clear what we're
Okay,
actually doing.
So you want, is it okay if we go with that motion? So go ahead and put more details, whatever else you want to say. Is that good
Oh, that
enough?
was
Those
it.
are- those
I
are the
think- Did you
details.
get that?
We're good.
That the plan commission finds that
Because the
extraordinary
soil-
soil conditions on this site is a TIF eligible expense, and that it is advantageous to the TID that there be a 4-story building on this site. And therefore, some amount of TIF is warranted on this site.
Okay, so could we just make that your motion then?
Make my motion or Dan's motion?
Oh, okay, either way, so. And that's okay with you, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. We are going to go to the item number 8.
Wait, Mayor,
I'm opposed.
Oh, okay,
you gotta give a chance for him to
okay,
say.
all right.
I'm just,
Yes, okay, so it's 5 to 1, so,
5 to 1.
yes.
Do we need a specific motion to refer it on to council, or that's?
Yeah, because it's going to
Inherent
the, it is going to the finance committee and the council. Right?
Yep.
I'm not sure I'm clear on next steps, but thank you, I guess.
It's going to the finance.
It's gonna go to finance committee and council.
Probably next Tuesday. Probably next Tuesday.
Yep,
Probably, yeah.
the 15th.
next Tuesday.
Finance committee will start at either 6 or 6:30. Once our finance director puts the agenda together, he'll decide how long we need for the meeting. And then council starts at 7:30. So if you're on the Notify Me subscription service for the city, you'll get the finance and council agendas.
Okay.
Which is where you go regardless.
Okay, we're going to skip well, we're going to come back to 7 later, but we're going to go to concept review of Highland Ridge Apartments, new building on existing site, 5700 block Highland Way. Start with the staff report.
Still trying to figure out that whole motion. I think I got it. Okay, so I apologize that this got added late to the agenda. That was my fault. They had someone on their development team that had a baby, and I gave them permission to skirt the deadline by a few days. And then I forgot to convey that to our office manager, so it didn't get put onto the agenda. So I apologize for the short notice that you had to review this project. I don't really have anything to add to the staff comments, except that I talked with Mr. Held today, and there, included in my staff report, I had mentioned that there would be a rezoning required for the development, and he has stated that he thinks that there might be a possibility that the development would actually fall under the existing zoning classification. So we're doing some research on that, because this is one of the few properties that we have in the city that is under the old zoning code. It's zoned R3A, which is a combination of what formerly was R3 and R4 in our 1972 zoning ordinance. So we're doing a little bit of research on that and looking through the files, but otherwise I don't have anything else.
So the,
There is.
Or should I just work off of yours and? I can get you one.
so the advantage here is that the stormwater plan would be applicable to the whole building.
Correct. There's a few things, I mean, kind of going back to what we talked about all night.
It'd be easier to work off mine because you might have to install.
Okay,
this.
if you just go to the first, problem is I can't see what you're seeing.
And you will follow the new county standards or state standards.
What are we looking at?
Go to the drawing set, there. So that's the aerial site locator. The site is located off of Highland Way, which is off of Century Avenue. To the west of the site, I've got the site kind of highlighted in a peach color there. To the west, you can see we've got, zoom in so I can read mine.
Wood Creek Village.
Wood Creek Village condominiums. There's a Highlands West condominium to the south. And then there's Parkland to the east and to the north, Pheasant Ranch Conservancy. If you move to the next drawing in the set. This is a blow-up of the aerial of the site. Currently, in the center of that aerial, you'll see there's 3 existing buildings on the site and 1 additional building to the south.
That building to the south, is that part of your, no, that's just a single-family home?
Nope.
No, they're all apartments.
Nope.
But this one, there's 3 buildings, but, there's a building.
There's 3 larger 2-story buildings, and then there's an existing smaller building that was added later. This development was originally done in the 90s.
Before that. Really?
I also have Ron Kloss from D'Onofrio here to talk about the stormwater aspects, and I've got Dick and John McKenzie here, the owners of the development.
Well, if this was done in 92 under R3A zoning, then as long as what you're doing is similar, I would think we're going to be okay. That's just because the zoning ordinance hasn't changed since then.
The concern is the overall number of units
Oh,
for
yes.
the overall site. So there's like a calculation that needs to be done, but we don't know the current number of units on it.
I think the lot area per dwelling unit, and that varies based on the size, the number of bedrooms per dwelling
Gotcha,
unit.
gotcha.
And then there's credit for underground parking, like 500 square feet per unit credit. And this is a pretty large site. It's over 9 acres total.
I had heard that, I haven't been part of this, but I had heard that there's a question as to whether it could be done under R3A zoning, and I interpreted that differently, so, but I agree with what Abby just said.
So it's going to be close, I think, when we come in with the additional 24 units we're looking to add. We need to do that calculation. If not, we'd probably have to rezone it then. But there's an area on this site, and I'm trying to think of how I can point at it.
Well, here, you can use the, so this is now rotated, so north is now to the east. Are you looking at going,
Yeah, please,
you want me to rotate?
can you rotate it on the screen?
Sure how I can do that when it's in full screen and it's part of a PDF.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions? Rotate clockwise. I don't want to rotate it clockwise, right?
Well, you can rotate it clockwise 3 times.
I was going to, but then I lost track of where I am.
3 right turns is the same as the left turn. Yeah.
Denmark?
There we go.
I guess I better rotate mine so I'm matching yours so we talk about it.
Actually, I'm not sure I did that right.
You did. Now north is up. And you can see on the top of this screen the proposed 24 unit, where it would be located.
Oh, there it is, yeah, got it.
Okay, so there's a relatively vacant area on the northeast corner of the site that the owners thought would be a good place that they could add some units to this existing project. And upon further review and looking at the grading on the site, it was the original stormwater detention plan or basin that occupies part of this area that is, at least on the southern portion of it, it's largely overgrown. What we propose to do is to reconfigure the stormwater on the site so that we can bring part of the site up to the current infiltration standard and kind of do a hybrid between the stormwater management requirements that were in place at the time that this project was originally developed and what is currently required. So I think with that, I would let Ron discuss the stormwater.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ron Kloss. I'm an engineer with D'Onofrio Kotke. When this project was developed in the early 90s, stormwater management was much simpler. So for this project, there was one dry basin in the northern section. This proposed building would occupy a portion of that. So we would have to rework the stormwater management. And what our goal would be to add infiltration, sediment reduction, oil and grease control, and then achieve as much peak control as possible. But I don't think it's feasible to bring the entire site up to today's standards. There's just not enough room. But we would like to add a rain garden in the middle courtyard to collect all of that water and treat it, and rework the portion of the current basin that's still open to achieve as much of that as possible. So the staff has noted that we'd like to be referred to the Water Resources Committee and talk to them about this situation, do some negotiating, quite honestly, and see if we can do good things with stormwater management for the city and also some infill with this new building.
Any questions for Ron or?
Current stormwater basin, does it have a discharge pipe towards the creek?
Looks like it goes.
Yes, it goes into the conservancy there to the north, to the northwest.
So it currently drains over land towards the conservancy.
Yes.
You know what? I've
Would,
seen-
would, Susan, would you like us to refer this to conservancy lands as well? Yes. Since it abuts right onto.
Looks like there's a drainage way right here.
There is, I walked that.
Yeah.
And I've seen the water at the bottom. Yeah, here it is, right here.
Yep.
So this would do away with that?
No.
Oh.
No, with any stormwater basin, you need some type of release.
Yeah.
Understood. But what you're showing here is an outflow, well, this is existing though.
That's the current arrangement.
Okay, I got it. I understand now. Got it.
Your outflow should flow over land for sediment removal before it goes to a creek.
Yes.
We don't want more pipes going directly into the creek. Yeah.
Right. And in all likelihood, we would rework the release structure to meet the new design.
Have you done any preliminary work then to, any preliminary numbers to where you would get with infiltration with this hybrid system? Or
We think we can get 90% stay on, if that means anything to you, or I could explain that further. 80% sediment reduction, and then perhaps control the 10 to 25 year peak storms.
So that's by having a rain garden, that's what you're proposing, right?
A rain garden in the middle courtyard,
Mhm.
and then a bio bed north of the proposed building.
So 90%, is that 90% of the water, with the property the way it is now developed? Or is that 90%? I guess I'm asking you, you said you're gonna bring a hybrid and bring it up. You said you can't bring it up to today's standards. I'm trying to understand what the hybrid would mean as far as how you're improving the site that's already there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, there's really no measure installed for infiltration. So the 90% stay on means that you achieve infiltration at a rate that equals 90% of what used to stay on the land in its undeveloped condition. So it'd be a huge improvement over the current condition where there's really no infiltration feature.
But 90% of the stay on of the undeveloped land for that design storm, which is like a 2 or 3 year storm.
Well, you really look at a smaller storm for the infiltration component, more like a 1 year. And then by doing that, if we put more of our efforts into that, there really isn't room to control up through the 100-year peak.
But you propose that you can
That's-
control up to 25-year peak.
Somewhere between the 10 and 25.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the compromise. But again, to try and retrofit the entire site to meet today's standards would be just a huge leap forward.
Is there any plans to do anything that would mitigate the water that goes down into the Wood Creek condominiums currently?
Yeah,
That is a neighborhood issue.
Yes, it's a very small percentage of the site that runs in that direction. And I have talked to Dick McKenzie about a solution for that. So that would be, it's a separate item from stormwater management, but yes, there are things that can be done.
And Abby, as staff is looking into whether this can be done with zoning or PDD, could you get the engineer or the lawyer to help us know, if you rezone the whole site to PDD, does that trigger a stormwater management plan for the whole site, or just for the portion that is rezoned?
They are doing for the whole site in any case.
Yeah.
That's what they're proposing.
Right.
Yeah, I talked with Gary Huth about this quite a bit. He's our assistant public works director and he handles most of the stormwater review. And he basically said that, you know, if the property doesn't require a rezoning, which gives the city a lot more control, he thinks that it would be difficult for the city to require the entire site be brought up to current standards.
So they'd only be held to the standards for runoff on the new building,
Yeah, he thinks, he said that.
or any site disturbance?
He felt that it would be, that Water Resources would likely make a recommendation for either the entire site being brought up to standards or maybe a hybrid scenario like Ron is proposing. But he said that the ordinances are gray and he thinks that it would be challenging for the city to take a hardline position on it with that, unless there's a rezoning that's required.
So how many units do you have on the site now?
No, they have 120 units now.
122.
122.
All in three-story buildings? Sorry, you gotta use the microphone, sorry. And the proposal would be a three-story building?
Yes.
It would fit within the,
There are three 36-unit, two-story buildings and one 14-unit, two-story building now.
That's what that smaller building is.
right, okay. So it certainly seems like the scale and height of the proposed building fits with what's there.
I think
And
we
as a-
design something that's gonna fit in there and
And
tuck
as-
in there pretty nice.
And as a concept, you know, providing more density on an already developed site seems like something we want.
Oh, of course.
I mean, the issue will be the stormwater.
That's the way we see it.
Huh?
So you want to refer to the Stormwater Sources Commission and CLC?
Conservancy lands.
Yeah, I would move to refer to Water Resource Commission and Conservancy Lands Commission.
Second.
Any further questions? Michael? Jennifer? Steve? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously.
You're not going up to 14 stories, are you?
You know, we thought about it.
Okay, we are going to go
Maybe not
to,
quite in that that scale.
We'll leave the cranes nearby.
we are going to item number 10. We got a lot of people waiting here.
Elevations.
So set a public hearing, general implementation plan, amendment and extension of Tribeca Drive, Tribeca Village.
Really have a nice view
I
out.
move we set a public hearing for Tuesday, November 12th at 7:05.
Second.
Okay. Now, we want to,
That's just setting a public hearing.
Yeah, we just set
Yes.
the public hearing.
do we need to provide them any input or anything, or?
Ooh.
Okay, okay, well, we have gone through all the material, at least I have, so I think, anything maybe you want to add or say, or?
No, the only thing I would add is that staff might want to consider adding the set of public hearing items earlier on the agenda since Brad
Okay.
and Brandy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
And Matt had.
those should be the first item.
Okay,
That's why you guys came?
Sorry.
okay,
It's just a formality.
well,
Judging by the hour.
Okay, all those, any questions or comments, or otherwise, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Well, go and
Thanks for
celebrate,
staying.
and sorry for keep you
job,
waiting
Brad.
that long, so.
I thought you were here for Parmenter. I thought you were here for Parmenter cross-section.
Okay, we are on to item number 7. Yeah, you're welcome to stay. It does impact.
It does
you, so-
impact your property.
Yeah, that's actually why I thought they were here.
Okay, Parmenter Street reconstruction, north of Century Avenue, typical cross-section. So there are various options here to look at. And,
You zoom in a little bit? more?
Sure.
I think that we need to get Mark or whoever's presenting a faster computer here.
Or like a mouse with a scroll bar.
Or a mouse with a-
Actually, yeah, well, it does have a scroll bar.
Oh.
It's
But
budget
but the
season, so
problem
let's
is
get
that
them.
It takes 5-10 seconds sometimes for this to respond, if not more. It's crazy.
Yeah, we can
So-
do better.
I did, what's that?
I think we can do better.
Yeah. Maybe it's the user
We'll
input.
tell-
I could
we'll
get
tell
out
our
and-
IT
I could
staff
get
that
out-
One of our council members demands it.
I could get out a different type of scroll, that might be faster.
This might be.
well, you probably already went through this. I think,
What do you think?
one thing which I like to see the consistency. So we already have big part of the Parmenter Street there, so, so whatever we are doing further down, it should be similar to what we have.
So what I'm passing out, Mayor, I'll give you a little, I'll explain my staff comments very briefly, because I know the hour's getting late. We, at the TIF staff, project staff, developed 4 alternatives with, working with the graphics folks at Vandewall. 2 of the alternatives show a 12-foot wide shared use path on the east side of the road. What I just handed out to you is a drawing that I thought might be helpful to look at this in the context of our regional trail network. I recall Commissioner Paulson, and I don't remember for somebody else, I know Jim Blodgett here a month ago, talking about their preference for biking along off-street paths instead of on roads.
Or protected bike.
Or protected bike lanes, the same idea. But the point is having greater protection instead of a bike lane without, with just a thin stripe of paint separating you from the vehicle. So this concept that I have on the screen is one of the 2 that accommodates a 12-foot wide shared use path. And what you have, what I handed out in the map that you have, is a concept that, an opportunity that we could have to connect the existing path along in front of Food Concepts and extend that north of Adana Drive, which would require converting some of that traffic without acquiring right-of-way. It would require converting some of those lanes, or a portion of the northbound lane to that path. Continuing that north of Century.
Portion of the northbound lane on Parmenter,
On
not
Parmenter.
Donna. Okay.
North of Donna, I thought I said. but
Okay.
Okay. So basically, converting that, and then once you get north of Century, it would have this cross-section that you see on the screen in front of you. And then I also, we'll discuss this at a future meeting with Bellefontaine Boulevard. This is hot off the press. The concept of how we handle Bellefontaine in the future with a path alongside it. So this is just meant to spur the discussion here. It's not something that is etched in stone. Happy to answer any questions you have about any of the 4 cross-sections that we are supplying for the meeting for Parmenter Street.
If we have a bike pedestrian path, that 12-foot path, do we also need a 5-foot bike lane in that same direction?
Yeah.
That's the University Avenue question between Seago and Middleton. You know, the county did that with, working with Madison, the path and the on-street bike lanes. Some commuters, as you probably well know, Leaf, have no problem with biking in bike lanes. They can go faster, especially on a road bike, whereas a number of bicyclists prefer the protected path situation or protected bike lane. Is it mandatory that we put a bike lane in when we have the path on the side? I mean, I would recommend both, but I can see why some people might think that's redundant, but they are really geared to different bicyclists, different types
I'm
of
just
bicycles.
looking at trying to create some space for your terraces and your median.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, this is
And putting the horizontal tree structures in there will slow the traffic down.
Mm.
And I think that's something we want to accomplish as well.
our minimum width, desired width for a terrace is 8 feet, and this drawing shows it at 10 feet 6 inches, which, is ample for trees. The right-of-way, total right-of-way in all 4 scenarios is 90 feet.
Yep, no, I understand that. I mean, you got to work within that 90 feet. And it's just how you're going to divvy it up.
Yeah, but Leaf, you do have a good point, though. I mean, you got this separate path. Why would you want to have still a bike lane?
Well-
So,
And I can see both, Mark.
Yep.
Especially with the scooter business going on. That's going to become more prevalent here in the Midwest. Yeah, that could,
There's
And
the,
Mark's right, it's a little bit different biker. You have the guy who is a commuter, and then you have the recreational
right.
rider.
No, I understand the difference.
you've got the Capitol Brewery.
I have a full appreciation of what's going on here, but I'm also trying to think of
You got the experienced
slowing
road
down.
bikers like Mark, and then you got the out-of-shape old guys like me who would.
And Mark. I've experienced, but I'm out of
I'm
shape.
looking at Allen Boulevard, for example, and I'm going, traffic's too fast on that.
Sure. Slow it down.
We need to slow the traffic down and make this an urban section.
and I actually like that. Yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. No,
Go ahead, Kurt.
No, I was gonna say, the real difference between B and B1 on
Is
these
the path.
is that B1 adds the path
And then you lose it here.
at the expense of the width
Terrace.
of the terrace.
Both terraces.
What option are you on right now?
This is, I think,
Is
B,
that
or
A?
A1, yeah.
Okay, can we see the other one?
I can go to, wait, okay, so you're talking about B1 here. What are you?
No, this is A1,
That's A1, because you don't have any trees in the,
no medians.
in the median.
Right. I can go to B1 if you like. This
I
is
think
B.
Leaf was clearly showing that we'd prefer a tree in the median.
Oh, you talked about median. I thought you were talking about the terrace before. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I want
No, we want
trees
both.
in all of them. I want to slow this traffic down.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
I want to
Did
make it
not-
an urban section.
did
I
not
don't want an
follow.
Allen Boulevard again.
So wait, you don't like B1? You
No,
don't
we like
this?
B1.
I like B1 minus the striped bike path in the same direction as the,
Well, I would say an urban, well, okay. So this is
You'd
kind
like
of
the
like
terrace
Bishop's
back
Bay.
to the terrace bigger then?
I'm
Yeah.
trying to maintain a larger terrace.
This is like Bishop's Bay Drive, or Bishop's Bay Boulevard, I think, if I'm not mistaken, up by,
Because he's saying want 8, yeah.
So
I
Lee,
want-
what you're
that was
saying
too
is
small.
eliminate
Yeah.
only one bike lane, the one that's
Yes.
on the
Yep.
same side as the
Yep.
ped, and then add 2.5 feet to
Caution
the
against
terrace
that.
on each side, which would get it above what Mark said is our minimum standard of 8 feet. Let's look at it.
And does it have to be an 11-foot driving lane by law? Or- I mean, one way to slow down traffic is
No, yeah.
10.5 foot, like narrow it a little bit, so it
we do-
feels
Well, Gammon even has a 9 foot right on that.
gammon.
On the hill in
on the
Madison.
hill,
I
yeah.
still zip down gammon on those
Yeah,
9-foot
yeah,
paths.
I know. I think, 10 or 11
just,
is probably okay.
you know.
I mean, I don't know what Public Works would say.
If you get a group of people riding a bike, and Capitol Brewery Bike Club comes to mind, but there's obviously many other organized rides too, they're gonna not take the bike path, they're gonna take the street.
They can take the driving lane too, because they are a vehicle.
They can, I'm
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Median could be 20 feet.
that so wide at 22?
Would the median be shorter to give?
I think the idea was to accommodate left turn lanes, but then also have a nose at intersections so that you can, And my response to that is we could make the intersections be a little bit wider, maybe the right-of-way could bump out just a little bit there.
Well, and the other reason for going to 22 feet on the median was we had a discussion at our TIF team meeting, and there were a couple of people that were concerned that at some future date, the city might decide we want the 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, and they felt like in case that were a future consideration, if you had the 22-foot median, that could more easily be converted into 2 11-foot drive lanes without messing with the.
The way we want to develop, I don't think we're gonna ever wanna make it 4 lane.
Abby was pushing so hard for that 4 lanes too.
Are these all people who went to graduate school in the 60s? Do you remember the old design standards that gave us the suburban arterial death traps? Sorry,
I won't put that part in the minutes.
don't put that in the minutes.
It's on tape though.
I mean,
I think
things have changed.
I like Leaf's idea in making this boulevard a little bit rather than just 6 foot wide, 6.6. That is a good way to go.
I really like the B1 or B option where there is some median for refuge for somebody who might be crossing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Consideration.
That's a big.
I do think this is very analogous to Bishop's Bay. So when next time you're up in that area, go on Q, turn right on Bishop's Bay Boulevard. And I think that's actually I can't quite, the concept of it, I don't know if the measurements are similar, but the concept of having a lane in each direction with a bike lane and a path on the east side, very similar actually.
Okay, so is that enough input, Abby? Seems like B1, so.
Well,
Is that what?
but B1 doesn't give
Without that bike lane there and widen,
B1, yes.
yes.
Rid of the soils.
So the Hubbard,
Yeah, that's what,
Scenario.
plus Hubbard idea there that get rid of the bike lane there.
Mark, it would be helpful, can you pull up the one that they're discussing right now, B1?
Yeah, I will. I'm just wanted to show what this looks like up here. So this is the Bishop's Bay idea, very similar. So here's the bike path, and here's the, sorry, just now it's catching up. I was already there for 10 minutes ago. So here's the travel lane in each direction with the bike lane, and here's the bike path. So I just wanted to show you that there's an example that's reasonably comparable in the city. I'll go back to the, where is it? So B1 looks like this. Gosh, it's still going.
Yeah.
Except that you're gonna eliminate that bike path on this side, yeah, eliminate this one and that add to this.
Add 2.5
But it doesn't.
for the
Yep,
terraces,
What-
bringing them up to
yep,
9.
yep.
One reason to keep the bike lane in each direction is if you have a disabled vehicle, you know, if you need to be able to get around the vehicle, you know, that would be room for someone to park in the bike lane. Gosh, I sound like an engineer a little bit, sorry. I'm trying to be practical, and I've heard all the arguments
Yeah.
across.
No, I mean, if you're turning right, you're supposed to pull into the bike lane.
Well, I'm talking if somebody stalls or.
Disabled, they can.
Stall, yeah. Well, I'm just nervous about having just an 11-foot wide path, or 11-foot wide, heck, the shared use path would be wider.
So the mayor did raise a concern about, does the form of Parmenter need to be consistent north of Century as opposed to south of Century? And then I guess we talk about retrofitting south of Century down to,
Donna.
down past Donna. Well, at least down to Donna where we start putting trees in the median and bump out those medians and
Make it an urban site.
eliminate that second travel lane in each direction.
Yeah.
And then watch the Public Works Committee,
I wondered the same thing if
have
across
a reaction.
Yeah. So,
creation
Huge.
across the corridor a little bit. Maybe it's not all B1.
Right.
Unique things at that intersection relative to maybe a section north of there to, I don't know, a street or an intersection or.
Okay.
I don't know what that is, what that magic formula is. I like the bike lane and the bike pedestrian path for the reasons Mark noted as well. I think you'll have users that will want to travel in that bike lane with traffic. They'll have the space on the travel lane to do that.
If you have trucks and wide loads and things like that, I don't know. I'm not going to argue for 4 lanes, obviously, but I just think having that extra width has some value. But I understand that what you're trying to balance here.
So what's the next step for the street design relative to
That nose.
Tribeca?
Well, we don't have design for this in the capital budget at this time, for next year. We have included it in future years. And I know that there's interest, moving the road project up as quickly as we possibly can. We are looking into, whether there might be an opportunity to use to help pay for at least some of the costs of the road, because although I think a lot of this property is either in the overlap area or is in TIF 5, TIF 3 is, this corridor is still integral to TIF 3.
Yep.
So we think that there might be able to be a case made that when we amend the project plan, which we're planning on doing next year to subtract some property from TIF 3, we might be able to add this project as an eligible cost, so that we could then fund it in TIF 3, which has more increment available for projects than we have in TIF 5. I think it would be helpful if the Plan Commission is comfortable making a recommendation on the typical cross-section without getting into the details about how it flows into Parmenter Street south of Century and other aberrations within the this area. It would be helpful though, because Public Works has made a recommendation for 2 lanes in each direction, which was what came to the Plan Commission last time. So at the very least, this would give the opportunity for the council to kind of sort that out, or we could, the Plan Commission could make a recommendation back to Public Works to reconsider their recommendation. I suppose that could be a possibility.
So
Maybe we could send
should we
Kurt
do
to
that then?
meeting.
1960s textbook?
Yeah, so make a recommendation to Public Works to buy updated manuals published by not by AASHTO, but by NACTO, so
Okay.
that's fighting words, I know, but.
I think that makes sense, because we want them to have an opportunity to look at it again, do we not?
So what,
Yeah,
what's
the
the
Public
motion?
Works made the recommendation to have a 4-lane, 2 lanes on either side.
On
And-
this section.
Yes.
And so it's,
They'll see this again next week if you make this motion tonight.
so make the motion that the Plan Commission supports option B1 with an urging to, no, I was saying, trying to get a little wider terrace, but I guess we're at option B1, and to refer it back to Public Works.
Relative to the development pattern that we're seeing evolve in Tribeca.
And to tell Public Works no more suburban 4-lane arterial death traps.
Why don't you just write a memo?
I should just write a memo to Public Works and show up there.
Okay,
Yeah.
more questions are coming.
Read it into the record.
Michael, Jennifer.
So I have a motion by Paulson, but I don't know if anybody seconded it.
Leaf, you second, did you second?
Sure, I'll
it?
second it.
Okay, and it's to recommend
To recommend option B1 and refer back to Public Works.
Okay,
And you can include part of the discussion where we are thinking of, at least some of us thought to not have the bike lane on the same side where you already have bike and pedestrian paths, so.
yep,
Is
that
that
is.
part of your motion, or is that?
No,
just
that's not part of the motion.
Background, okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. We are on to
So
item number.
just so that Abby and I understand for the minutes, is it then, so we'll reflect some of the discussion, but is the idea that you're giving the Public Works, or you're advising the Public Works Committee to, or you're requesting them to
Reconsider.
come up with ways to accommodate the wider terrace? So use B1 as a template, but then adjust, make sure that the terrace can be widened, maybe the right-of-way slightly widened, or is that what your intent was to give them a framework? No, but to give them a framework, is that the idea, or, I'm.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking, Mark, is that terrace is awful narrow to grow a street tree in. So you might want to talk to the forester to see what width they need to put a street tree in.
Understood.
Because I think you need that element if you want an urban section.
Understood.
And if you go to a 6'4" or 6'6",
That
that's
is-
pretty small terrace to put any kind of stature of a tree, which you're gonna need to obtain the optics that you're looking for.
And not just that, but snow storage. So, that's why I'm trying to ask, is it the intent that you're rigid with the 90 feet? What if it was a 94-foot right-of-way? You know, I'm just trying to understand
Well,
where.
I'm trying to work within what I think, do you have 94 feet to work within? You have 90 feet. to
The
work
idea is
within.
this is a framework. I'm just trying to understand, and I'm not trying to craft a motion or anything, because you guys have done that
No, well,
already.
what
but
I'm trying to do is just explain, you might want to talk to your forester to see what he can, see what terrace he needs to accommodate a tree that would be of a stature that would signal that you're in an urban section. Because I don't think your 6'6" is probably, well, it's.
Well, we prefer 8 feet
It's
as a
in the
standard.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
that's where I'm going.
Yeah, you want the trees which are healthy and, you know, and grow and look better. And 6'6" isn't going to do it.
No, I'm just hearing the desire to balance various objectives here, and,
Right.
and I think we have enough direction. I just,
Right.
you know, there has to be a little wiggle room.
The direction is to see if there's a way that they can come up with a cross-section that expands the terrace.
And it
Yeah.
could include reducing the median width.
Well, what you
Reduce
can
median
do is
width.
get wider.
By 18.
Well, and what you,
2 feet on each
Well,
terrace.
just, I guess,
you-
consult your forester.
well, one idea would be to narrow the road, and then as you get to an intersection, you bump it out a little bit, so you get that nose, which you see right here. You know, here's
Right.
this nose.
Right.
So
But
there are
also,
ways.
listen to
There are lots of-
Leaf, talk to the forester. I think that's a
I
good
heard
idea.
that, and I know what the answer is going to be, and we'll work with them, but I've got some ideas for how to respond to this motion, so.
Okay.
Good.
All right, we are on to last item, that's a comprehensive plan, Facebook poll results. Abby?
Okay, well, I'll try to go through this quickly.
Thank you.
Daphne put together this sheet, which I put at all your places to kind of summarize the feedback that we received to date on the Facebook posts that we've put out regarding the comp plan, visions, and values statements. We reached over 2,100 people. We had 132 engagements, and 61 people voted to let us know whether they agreed or disagreed with the statements. The vision statement was received pretty positively. We did have 6 people out of 27 who voted no, that they didn't agree with the vision statement. At least one of those folks commented in a separate post that they objected to the vision because they support the ideas, but they don't think Middleton is there yet. And then
It's a-
on,
They're not there with the vision yet, or, okay, okay.
So
It's
they
a
don't
vision. We want to,
no,
we want to
I
achieve
think
it.
that they liked the idea, but they didn't feel like we were there yet. And so it was, I think it was a little confusing the way that we posted that, and so we tweaked
Okay.
the language a little bit to make it clear that
because
this
it
is a
says it
future
is.
vision.
Oh,
It's
okay.
not like, we're not saying we're already here, we're already like,
So they said,
yeah. And then the other 5 may have completely disagreed with that as a future vision for the city. I don't know, because we did get one other comment, and it was more of an overall comment. There were a couple of things that this individual disagreed with. One was using the word urban to describe Middleton, and that was added by Commissioner Paulson at the last meeting. This person felt that people in Chicago would laugh at Middleton being classified as urban, and they didn't feel that Madison was an urban community either. They also did not like the language in, Mark, if you could, okay, you've got it up, good, thank you. In community, where we say, we are a welcoming, inclusive city with a distinct identity anchored by a vibrant downtown. They felt that the city is anchored by its neighborhoods and its people, and they felt that calling out the downtown as a specific enhanced part of the community was inappropriate in this value statement. And so we worked as a staff to come up with an alternative that we'd like to propose, which is anchored by a vibrant downtown, comma, unique neighborhoods, comma, and our people.
I think that makes sense. I like it.
Sure. It's actually a valid point.
Yeah. So that was a
It's a good point.
long and thoughtful comment that was provided. Other than that, it was just looking at the votes, and especially for the values statements, those were pretty positive. We didn't get that many people engaging, but they were overwhelmingly positive. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that we have a new sustainability coordinator with the city, Kelly Hilliard. And so we've been bringing her in to assist with the comp plan project. And she would like for us to reconsider the values definition for sustainability. And she brought up some good points about the words without compromising. This is kind of the old school definition of
Yeah.
sustainability, and it's a Brundtland definition, and we use this because this is what was in our previously adopted sustainability plan. She said that she would prefer to take into consideration more ideas on the concept of sustainability, which looks past the zero-sum game of keeping things as they are in perpetuity. The new definition should place emphasis on co-creation and collaboration when imagining our future, proffering a better possible future, not simply status quo, words like abundance and flourish. And then she provided a metaphor that's used in organic agriculture, and then also said that we should be thinking in systems and their integrations and embracing the complexity of sustainability. And she's going to be working on coming up with a couple of other options. For us to consider.
Okay, good idea.
Look forward to seeing it.
Those are all true, but that's.
Yes.
That's pretty big.
If anyone can do it, it is Kelly.
Yes.
So she'll come up with something amazing, I'm sure.
Succinct.
So how did they know all this? How many people reached and engagement? So you can have this data from Facebook.
Yeah, so
Facebook
for
gives it
the type of Facebook account that we have, I think actually you could probably see this on a private
Oh,
Facebook
okay.
account too.
Okay.
But we can drill down on all of our posts and see like which posts are getting the most engagement, how many people are sharing them,
Okay.
how many people
Okay.
reacted.
Any further input?
This is great. I think that 2,143 people
Reached.
were reached
Yeah,
is a
that's a lot.
fabulous
Yes.
outcome by using Facebook, so thank you, Facebook.
Russians.
Oh, and thanks to Daphne for putting it all together. too.
How many people actually?
Yeah, very good.
Okay,
There's a lot of times.
need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Need a second. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
So we are adjourned. Thank you.